during a time when creatures roamed freely and chaos filled the world. The Eye of Insight possessed the ability to uncover and understand every talent that belonged to a prodigy. The attempt had no effect at all on the director of the association, was taken aback by that single event. Once he had lived the simple life of a regular porter, unnoticed among the crowd. In a world filled with constant danger, those who hadn't unlocked any special powers were destined to spend their lives doing the hardest, most menial work. Since the emergence of the abyss, countless monsters had begun flooding into the world of humans. In response, individuals started discovering unique abilities within themselves. Empowered by these gifts, people managed to drive back endless waves of monsters and dared to explore the depths of the abyss. Because of this, a person's value came to be judged by the rank of their abilities. Those who achieved a high rank could look forward to a comfortable and easy life. Despite everything, remained unaffected. At the age of 35, he was still unable to access a status window. Once the character finished gathering the items left behind by the defeated monster, he surveyed his surroundings and noticed that lifeless bodies covered the battlefield. He stood alone, the sole person left alive. A massive beast loomed ahead, its voice sending shivers through the air with a quiet, eerie murmur. The figure standing before them was a demon of the highest SSS rank. Him steadied his stance as he prepared to launch an attack. With a simple, effortless movement, the demon ripped his arm away. A sudden burst of violet light shot through his head. At that moment, his whole life flashed through his mind in a flood of recollections. Each day seemed to bring a new hardship for him. Tragedy had struck early when he lost his parents in a devastating car accident. Without ever gaining any special abilities, he became an easy target for bullies at school. In his own eyes, he amounted to nothing but disappointment. Despite everything, he would not allow himself to meet such a pitiful end. As soon as his blood touched the earth, he had met the requirement needed to awaken. Before his eyes, an enormous gate gradually took shape. A pale figure gradually took shape from inside. Time appeared to come to a halt as the creature remained completely still. His eyes widened with shock as he looked on, unable to believe what he was seeing. The being who referred to himself as King revealed that actions in opening the gate were what had brought him into this world. From that point forward, he was endowed with the boundless power befitting a sovereign. He had selected, having noticed the young man's steadfast determination and relentless perseverance. Before had a chance to respond, an intense burst of white light erupted, engulfing everything in its brilliance. The king quietly assured that a time would come when every mystery would make sense, expressing hope that their paths would cross once more. At that moment, a crimson light streaked through the emptiness, slowly blinked awake, his eyes fluttering open once more. He received a sharp slap that left his cheek throbbing. He still hadn't managed to understand the situation unfolding around him. A notification panel on the side drew his gaze, making him realize that he might have traveled 16 years into the past. Laughter erupted uncontrollably from deep within his chest. In the blink of an eye, he launched a powerful punch toward the man with short hair. The force of the blow hurled him several dozen meters through the air. Now that he could see the status window, he understood that he had become an awakened being. Simultaneously, a pair of individuals yelled and rushed toward him. With only a single punch and a swift kick, everything changed. With a swift motion, he knocked both of them off their feet, sending them tumbling onto the ground. For 35 years, he dedicated himself to relentless physical training, never allowing himself a moment's rest. He possessed expert understanding of the monstrous abyss and had become skilled in a wide array of battle tactics. Confronting this group of inexperienced opponents, he felt certain that he would win. In just a few seconds, he had overcome both opponents, leaving them sprawled on the ground at his feet. At that moment, rose gradually from where he had been sitting. He triggered his C-rank skill, causing his skin to harden and transform into unyielding stone. A moment later, he sprang ahead, swinging his fist directly towards face. Moved swiftly, just managing to avoid the danger by shifting to the side. Oh wasted no time and sprang upward in a swift motion. A powerful impact sent everything tumbling down. Their efforts resulted in nothing more than striking the bare earth. At that exact instant, appeared suddenly behind Bei O as if he had teleported. He hurled a powerful punch, aiming it directly at the other man's face. The strike bounced harmlessly off the hardened barrier, leaving it untouched. Stood motionless, caught off guard by the unexpected attack. Without hesitation, Bei struck him with overwhelming force, hurling him through the air for several dozen meters. Hovered dangerously close to death's edge, approached him at a measured pace. A cold, mocking smile formed on his lips as he looked down on his opponent. In his mind, he dismissed them as pathetic and wondered what they would do next. Would they turn and flee, or would they futilely fight back with their insignificant ability? To every awakened individual, their skills and rank determined their entire worth. An F rank possessed only slightly more strength than an ordinary person. In contrast, S ranks were like beasts, with abilities and physiques that far beyond normal limits, held a talent that was both mysterious and rare, yet it was classified as the weakest, falling into the F rank. He had no hope of winning against someone as strong as a C rank. Despite everything, he sensed an unwavering confidence within himself, a certainty that victory was inevitable. inevitable. Gradually pushed himself upright once more. Bei stared in disbelief, his eyes growing wide as he struggled to accept that the awakening had truly happened. Gazed down at his hand, quietly realizing that this was Devour. A rush of mana pulsed through his veins, making him keenly aware of the power now within him. In the blink of an eye, surged ahead, unleashing a powerful punch with fierce determination. Simply lifted his right hand in response. The two opposing sides crashed into each other with tremendous force. After everything settled, the layer of stone that had encased Bei's body started to split and gradually fell apart. A surge of energy erupted unexpectedly, consumed every remnant of his power. The matter appeared to be resolved at last, or so it seemed. A message appeared in front of him, announcing that predation had been successfully finished. The outcome was a promotion to rank E. A new ability had been gained, the power of petrification. The setting changed, revealing him transporting the 3 unconscious students toward the school's infirmary. Following a short session of medical care, he spun around and slipped away in silence. He found it hard to accept what had just happened. He really had unlocked the power of predation and managed to overcome Ho. In his previous life, he had trained endlessly, yet his rank never improved. However, a single fight in this new life had completely altered his fate. He quietly noted that, despite being classified as an F-rank skill, its strength exceeded that of a typical C-rank, and it even had the ability to take powers from others. He found himself questioning the king's reasons for granting him such power, uncertain about the mission behind his return. At that moment, understanding the true essence of predation became the top priority. After losing his parents, he found himself residing in his uncle's home. He intended to collect details about others who possessed abilities similar to his own. Suddenly, what he saw stopped him in his tracks, leaving him stunned and motionless. A cluster of thugs blocked his path, with Young positioned among them. Someone questioned whether the other person should be in school at that moment, expressing surprise at their unexpected presence. Without waiting for permission, they decided to take the person along. He glanced down at the cardboard boxes that lay haphazardly across the floor. In that moment, he realized the reason Young had been spending time with the bullies. The haired troublemaker shot a menacing look and warned that anyone who didn't want trouble should act as if nothing had happened. Before he managed to complete his sentence, launched a forceful punch directly toward him. Everyone in the audience stood motionless, stunned by what had just occurred. Swiftly lifts his right hand, attempting to trigger his predatory ability. The system interrupted with a notification, declaring that the skill was unavailable for use. Just then, the thug struck him with a powerful punch, knocking him off his feet and launching him across the room. In a flash, the trio of opponents, they unleashed their powers. 3 powerful currents of energy surged in his direction, colliding with him directly. Amir, considered worthless and yet to awaken his powers, behaved with surprising audacity. At that moment, a new system notification rang out, declaring that predation had been initiated without error. The system, the activation of several abilities, Bind, Toxin, and Bleed. Their surprise was evident as they realized he had not only withstood their assaults, but also rendered them completely ineffective. Responded with a powerful strike that sent one opponent crashing to the floor. He remained uncertain about the exact events that had unfolded, but one undeniable truth emerged. The force of predation was overwhelmingly powerful. In a matter of seconds, the group collapsed in defeat at his feet. From that battle, he discovered 2 important facts. Only those who had awakened had access to a status window, and even though he could capture information about them, not all specifics were shown. Secondly, predation stood apart from all other abilities, as its power relied on more than just mana. Even more significant was its apparent ability to completely cancel out any effects caused by abnormal status powers, thanks to a passive trait. The accuracy of his assumptions would only become clear after conducting further experiments. Just then, his younger cousin unexpectedly fell to his knees in front of him. He repeatedly expressed deep regret for his actions, and promised to change his ways, vowing to follow in his footsteps from that moment forward. His eyes fluttered in bewilderment, clearly surprised by the unexpected action. There was no opportunity to linger on those thoughts, as a much more significant event was about to unfold that day. He offered a gentle smile and beckoned the other person to follow, explaining that there was something important they needed to handle together. At the same time, inside a secured area called the Forbidden Ground, a crowd of recently awakened people stared in disbelief as the event called a gate break started to unfold before their eyes. Marked a disastrous moment when the barrier linking the world to the abyss unexpectedly ripped apart, flooding the land with relentless hordes of monsters. A full decade had passed since the previous gate had broken. Both operatives standing close by showed clear signs of unease. One of them tried to calm the other, explaining that there was no need to worry because their special ability was a B-rank barrier. The current gate break had been classified as C-rank, which meant that any monsters emerging from it would be limited to that level of threat. Despite any surprises that might have arisen, a barrier of B-rank strength was was expected to be enough to maintain order. The pair rushed further into the off-limits area, only was aware that the gate break was far more serious than a simple C rank. Simultaneously, their commanding officer noticed that something was amiss. He wondered how creatures ranked at C level were managing to penetrate a barrier designed to withstand even those of B rank. Before he had a chance to complete his sentence, enormous shadows erupted from the rift. One by one, enormous beasts appeared, their furious roars echoing through the air. Within a single heartbeat, the barrier broke apart completely. Before anyone could respond, the intense blaze swept over them, engulfing all in its fiery grasp. At that exact time, his cousin found himself puzzled, questioning how could have predicted the increase in the gate's break level. In order to hide that he had traveled back in time, just claimed that he acted on a hunch. Just then, an enormous swarm of monsters surged forward, rushing at the panicked crowd as chaos erupted. He shouted a reminder about the instructions he had given earlier, urging that this moment was the ideal opportunity to act on them. His cousin shouted a question back, wondering what he planned to do. Without hesitation, the speaker confidently assured everyone that handling the situation would be their responsibility. At the same time, officials gathered in the command center became alarmed by a sudden critical update. The situation with the gate break had intensified, reaching a higher rank. At this point, just a single awakened still possessed the strength to face the challenge, and possessed the powerful light blade, an ability ranked at their level. As the setting changed, stood firm, defending his position as countless monsters surged toward him. Utilizing his predatory ability, he swiftly cleared out all presence around him. As the battle raged on, he came to a sudden understanding. The power called predation was triggered whenever he grew tired. Whenever his exhaustion level rose above 70, the ability would no longer activate. While most powers depended on mana, it wasn't the sole factor that mattered. Fatigue also played an unseen role. Every time a skill was used, it sapped stamina, and as exhaustion grew, both strength and staying power diminished. To his astonishment, he realized that defeating monsters allowed him to replenish his mana by drawing in the energy they left behind. Even more significant was the fact that his overall rank had advanced to D, with both his predation and petrification abilities also reaching the D level. As he reflected on his abilities, he noticed that each use of predation seemed to amplify its power. With this rapid growth, he believed it was only a matter of time before he surpassed everyone and became the most powerful person alive. He got ready to sprint toward where his cousin was. Without warning, an enormous creature plummeted down from above. At that moment, emerged, holding her radiant blade that shimmered brightly in her grip. With one brilliant motion, she sliced the monster straight down the middle, splitting it into two neat pieces. With surprising skill, she effortlessly defeated a monster ranked at A level. The evidence pointed unmistakably to the wielder of, as the person who had prevented the gate break before the timeline changed. She remained just as strong as before, yet her presence in this place was a mystery. Prior to his arrival, she was meant to be confronting the massive ogre that threatened the opposite end of the city. Without warning, his skill perception alerted him with a sharp ping. Just a heartbeat later, a sharp blade drove directly into his chest. Disbelief washed over her face as her eyes grew wide. The attacker flashed a sinister smile, feeling triumphant at having finally trapped their target in. At the same time, his cousin lingered outside the infirmary, deep in contemplation. His objective was straightforward. He needed to keep Nayoung safe. In her past life, she lost her life to a monster as she attempted to rescue those around her. He resorted to using his sleep ability, rendering her unconscious so he could relocate her to a secure place. He decided that whatever happened after this, he would take care of it on his own. Despite everything, a persistent question lingered in his mind. He wondered how could possibly possess all this knowledge. He wondered if he had developed an ability that let him glimpse what was yet to come. The setting changed once more, revealing a war-torn battlefield engulfed in disorder. Found himself rooted to the spot, unable to move as disbelief washed over him. Despite bleeding profusely, raised her voice and demanded to know the stranger's identity. True to her reputation as an A-rank, just her presence seemed to fill the room with overwhelming strength. The person responsible for attacking her turned out to be Han Sang, a B-rank villain known for his ability to become invisible. In this world, individuals who had awakened to special abilities and chose to misuse them for criminal acts were labeled as devils. Han Sang had a reputation for being exceptionally dangerous. Before returned, he recalled, the two of them had never once argued. The character wondered if coming back had already altered what was supposed to happen. At that instant, lifted her glowing blade and rushed directly toward Han Sangdu. Suddenly, the earth shook with intense force beneath everyone's feet. A massive beast burst forth from the ground, breaking through the earth's surface with overwhelming force. A gigantic fist hurtled through the air, barreling down on the group with tremendous force. A rapid change in the fight left everyone on edge. Han Sangdu shifted his attention in its direction. The unexpected presence of onlookers took them by surprise, making the situation more intriguing than before. The character decided that eliminating eliminating the other person would be their first action. With a fierce determination to end his opponent, he sprang ahead, every movement charged with lethal purpose. Remained perfectly still, his form stiffening the moment the petrification took effect. With a quick and powerful kick, he launched Han Sang through the air, forcing him to tumble backward. Han Sang-do was identified as the notorious criminal, his words delivered with a chilling tone. The title of infamy clearly referred to him, leaving no doubt about whom they meant. After much anticipation, the character felt privileged to at last make the acquaintance of the other person. The pair engaged in a violent struggle, their blows and defenses resounding through the air with the intensity of a storm. Han quickly discovered that his sword was powerless against the impenetrable barrier had formed. He was unsure of how had identified him, yet he understood that if the other man became overly self-assured, such pride could lead to his downfall. In the midst of combat, surprises inevitably arise. In a split second, Han became invisible, lashed out with his fists in every direction, desperately attempting to shield himself from invisible blows. Despite the odds, Han managed to spot a gap he could exploit. A swift blade cut into his arm, sending a burst of crimson droplets flying through the air. Hans curled his lips into a sneer, recalling how many like the stranger had been hunted before. Those who believe nothing can harm them tend to flee the moment their vulnerabilities are exposed. Han Sang-do smirked coldly at his opponent, declaring that before their final moments, he would teach them something important. Every technique, no matter how powerful, carried its own flaw. A constant onslaught of attacks crashed down, breaking apart much of the stone that shielded its body. Apparently, even turning to stone was not enough to stop every attack. Despite its strength, stone would eventually break down if it faced relentless attacks. Wondered if his opponent had seen through his plan from the very beginning. As he observed the fight, he realized that the man's strength was anything but ordinary for a D rank. In fact, he was managing to hold his own against someone ranked as a B. Han's lips curled into a sly grin, signaling that he was ready to bring this trial to a close. He surged ahead again, propelling himself forward with renewed determination. He narrowed his eyes and revealed his motive, explaining that the fight had been sparked by his desire to claim the other's skill for himself. In the following moment, he made himself unseen once more by using his power of invisibility. Moving swiftly in tight circles around, the figure scanned for a chance to strike, remained composed as he lifted his left hand, reminding his opponent that every ability comes with its own flaw, just as they had admitted before. After using predation numerous times, he became aware of an important detail. Not a single being had managed to break free from its grasp. No matter where someone tries to conceal themselves, escaping from being hunted is impossible. In the blink of an eye, shadows surged through the air, swallowing Han Sang-do's unseen figure completely. Meanwhile, and was sprawled across the ground, her strength nearly gone as she struggled to stay alive. She found herself powerless against the relentless onslaught of the towering beast. At the very moment when her life was in peril, suddenly materialized at her side, swiftly rescuing her from harm's way. He noticed how quickly the person had been defeated, a sly grin spreading across his face as he silently acknowledged how much easier his task had become. The setting changed as and his cousin made their way back to their house. The moment their loved ones learned of the disaster, they hurried over, expressions etched with concern and a sense of comfort at finding everyone safe. All around the world, people heard reports that the crisis at the gate had at last been brought under control. The surviving heroes were being cared for by medical staff. As reporters gathered closely and admitted with visible discomfort that she was not the one responsible for bringing down the giant. Although no one had discovered the monster's remains, a sense of anxiety continued to hang over the community. Glanced at his phone and realized that there wasn't a single reference to him anywhere. He let out a quiet breath, feeling the tension ease from his body. In his mind, he acknowledged that it was time to begin the next stage. Despite having gained 3 abilities, he struggled to manage them. Attempting to activate all of them together was beyond his capabilities. His energy reserves depleted at an alarming rate, causing exhaustion to wash over him within moments. The true answer lay in mana potions. The elixir possessed the remarkable ability to replenish both mana and stamina, but its exceptionally high cost made it difficult for most to afford. Obtaining permission from the authorities was necessary before anyone could venture into the dungeons. With no other choices left, he decided to explore a hidden dungeon that no one had ever entered before. His upcoming challenge involved the B-rank monsters known as, which T.O. had to defeat in order to advance. To succeed, he would have to absorb hundreds of these creatures. Without warning, the creatures sprang forward together, their movements perfectly synchronized. Massive balls of silk hurtled in his direction, but he remained composed and triggered predation to shield himself. The process of feeding started. A rush of energy flooded his body, and with With it, a fresh ability awakened within him, numbness. The focus moved next to the headquarters of the player association. Individuals known as players had received permission to enter dungeons and use their special abilities to conquer them. Within Nation H, power was divided among 5 dominant factions, with the 4 strongest guilds among them. The warriors directed all their attention toward the battle at hand. A group of skilled creators explored the mysteries of alchemy. The mages discussed magic. The night walkers focused their efforts on collecting intelligence and gathering valuable information. Above everyone else, the widely acknowledged organization known as the Player Association of Nation H presided over all. Seated around the conference table, 2 influential individuals commanded attention. Among them was the S-rank player who led the Nightwalkers Guild, asserting a strong presence in the room. The president of the Player Association, known as Ji Jin, held the prestigious rank of S. At that time, their greatest worry centered on a rebellious group that called themselves the Malice Guild, whose influence was rapidly spreading. Everywhere this group traveled, each member identifiable by a ring carved with 3 skulls, they left destruction behind, stealing, setting fires, and taking lives. Lately, their violence had shifted toward hunting down players. Narrowed her eyes, sensing there was another motive behind being summoned. He assured Jean that wasn't the case, then mentioned there was another matter where he needed Jean's advice. The speaker recalled that the other person had successfully completed the player qualification test at the age of 19. He then questioned whether someone still in high school would truly be able to overcome such dangerous monsters. Around that time, reached out to the Alchemist Guild, hoping to purchase several mana potions. He selected several low-quality magic stones with a relaxed demeanor, intending to exchange them. Not long after the crisis at the gate was resolved, students returned to their classrooms as schools resumed normal operations. Throughout that time, devoted himself to rigorous physical training, determined to make his body stronger. They ventured into dungeons, seeking to gather magic stones as they went. After several days of hard work, he finally earned the prestigious status of VIP within the Alchemists Guild. Simultaneously, every one of his abilities rose to C rank. His overall rank had now advanced to level C. Despite everything, he understood that his adventure still had a long way to go. Those nearby stared in disbelief at what had happened to him. Defeating a powerful figure such as O might bring about significant repercussions if anyone were to find out. At that moment, several men began to walk toward them. At the front of the group marched Li Young, the formidable S-rank awakened who commanded Bei's crew. He belonged to the 3rd generation of the group's founding family, which supported Academy, and he held absolute authority over the school's troublemakers. Li Young himself had secretly encouraged Bei O and his group to pick on, demanded to know what was going on, his voice sharp as he confronted the person in front of him. Immediately, Li's followers erupted in a chorus of angry shouts and insults from their place behind him. In the following instant, a powerful punch struck one of the men, launching him through the air. Li fixed a cold gaze on the other person, making it clear that they were not allowed to say anything in that moment. He shifted his attention toward, reminding himself that although had defeated Bei, it was no reason for him to become overconfident. The person believed it was important for the other to recognize who was standing before them. His lips curled into a subtle smirk as he silently acknowledged the remarkable power that came from an S-rank awakened, finding it truly impressive. Beneath the surface, he questioned whether Li truly had the strength to survive being hunted. At the height of the tension, a clear and steady voice sliced through the silence. Young had spoken. She stood out at the academy as the recognized S-rank genius. Her intelligence and reputation set her apart, and everyone believed she was on the path to reach SS rank status someday. Despite her many strengths, she possessed a single weakness, an unyielding stubbornness. Whenever she made up her mind about something, it was impossible for anyone to sway her decision. Li's expression tightened, annoyance clear on his face as he reacted to her interruption. The tension between their energies filled the space, causing the walls to shake as if a battle was about to erupt. In the end, Li chose restraint and began to walk away. As soon as he walked out, he unexpectedly struck at Yi Young. The moment their abilities met, a fierce clash erupted. Shock waves surged across the hallway, causing a visible disturbance. Right then, the school's loudspeakers suddenly crackled on. A message rang out across the school, announcing that the Player Association had organized a special lecture in the main hall. Students were instructed to assemble there without delay. Li glanced up with a slight smirk, quietly repeating the words, "The Player Association," to himself. After taking a brief pause to consider, he chose to go there before anywhere else. Heard the man's voice as he glanced back, assuring him that he was safe for the moment. Urged his companions to hurry, reminding them of the announcement and insisting that they needed to go to the main hall without delay. Li Young's eyes widened with astonishment, and for a brief moment he stood completely still. The setting changed, and a low murmur spread throughout the group of students as they exchanged quiet guesses about the topic of the upcoming lecture. A middle-aged man stepped onto the stage, picked up the microphone, and introduced himself as Go-tae. He announced his presence that day for two main purposes. The first was to offer guidance and knowledge about the recent incidents involving gate breaks. The second was to share information about the new adjustments planned for the upcoming Player Association examination ceremony. The future of the Player Association in Nation H remained uncertain. The destiny of what is to come now rests with a rising generation of awakened players. The moment he brought up modifications to the exam system, the crowd buzzed with excitement and questions, their voices blending into a lively hum that charged the atmosphere. Minister Tae launched into an explanation. Over the past few months, he observed that gate breaks were happening much more often than before. He noted that both the appearance of dungeons and the surge of monsters had increased dramatically. The Player Association had begun to struggle with a significant lack of personnel, which led to an important decision. From this day forward, high school students would be permitted to participate in the official player examination. A hush swept through the hall, lasting only a moment before whispers and startled reactions filled the air. He explained that they would choose the top candidates according to the results of the overall assessments. Immediately sensed the deception. Although the announcement seemed just, he recognized that the true selection process had already started in secret. The procedure unfolded as Go activated his unique ability, known as the Eye of Insight. The skill enabled him to observe the ability statistics of everyone around him. By concentrating with enough intensity, he was also able to access their status windows and examine them closely. Minister's expression reflected satisfaction as he observed the room. The students at this academy displayed abilities that exceeded those found elsewhere. Among them, several showed genuine promise for becoming future players. What caught him off guard the most, however, were the presence of two particular people. Someone stood close to the front. He had the recommendation list from the Nightwalkers Guild in hand, but the abilities shown by these two inexperienced students exceeded anything he could have imagined. Discovering them felt like uncovering rare, hidden gems. Lee Young's voice cut through the room with a chill as he addressed the group. He pointed out that the lecture focused on the player exam and implied that one person present did not fit in. He went on to explain that participation in the player exam was limited to those who had awakened abilities. The speaker believed that individuals like him, those who had not awakened their powers, were unworthy of being present in that place. Responded in a composed manner, expressing the belief that true strength is not measured by power alone. Awakening rank, adaptability, and understanding of the abyss, all these elements were important to him. A person could only be considered a true player after proving themselves in several different challenges. Lee quickly pointed out that the exams were meant for individuals who had already awakened their powers, implying that for anyone without such abilities, taking the tests would only lead to embarrassment. Despite what others might have thought, understood the real reason behind his presence. His sole purpose was to determine if his awakening was truly authentic. Young felt a strong urge to intervene and prevent Lee from continuing. Despite wanting to speak up, she restrained herself, recalling just how unyielding could be. She understood that he would refuse assistance from anyone. Despite Lee's intense glare, stood his ground, showing no signs of being disturbed, believed that there was no need for anyone to witness it firsthand, just to confirm that he deserved to be there. Minister Go's face tightened with displeasure as he observed an S-rank targeting someone less powerful. The sight left him feeling let down. When he used the Eye of Insight to observe, his face went rigid with surprise. No matter how hard he tried, he failed to detect any numbers in the boy's status. As softly spoke about leaving if those without powers were unwelcome, a hush swept through the hall. The minister remained stunned, unable to process what had just happened. Neither the leader of the association, not even guild leader Yu Yuan, had ever provoked such a response. The incident occurred when the child was by himself. He observed as moved farther into the distance. Despite his best efforts, he found himself unable to discern any information about the boy's stats. His lips curled into a subtle, teasing grin just as the numbers at last revealed themselves. However, the sight before him caused him to stand motionless in shock. Possessed a power level of 5096. The setting changed, revealing as he investigated the area, hoping to uncover evidence related to the king. Before long, Lee Youngs discovered his hiding place and insisted that he accompany them without causing a scene. The character wondered what consequences might follow if they chose not to agree. The person recalled that the other individual had an aunt who managed a restaurant. In response to those remarks, a chilling sharpness flickered in his gaze. The thug sneered, warning that refusal to cooperate could lead to harm for others. A moment later, a deafening crash resounded through the air. In an instant, the library collapsed into a heap of rubble. The speaker demanded to know Lee Young's location, making it clear that this was the final time they would ask. Once discovered where he needed to go, he immediately made his way toward an indoor room. A hairless security guard stood in place, clearly taken aback. From the very beginning, He unleashed a series of abilities meant to weaken his opponent, but remained completely unaffected by any of them. Only someone who had reached a rank or above as an awakened could possess resistance like that. Li Young's suspicions proved correct when he discovered that was already awake. Li had actually arranged this meeting as a way to try and bring him onto the team. Li calmly revealed plans to establish a guild after graduation, explaining that the endeavor would require individuals with outstanding abilities. Su was not considered low quality or insignificant. The words seemed to linger, as if directed at someone of their kind. He motioned in his direction, signaling that he wanted him to let go of any lingering resentment from the past and dedicate himself as a faithful subordinate. If the person, both they and their family, would enjoy a life of ease and comfort. Let out a dismissive scoff, showing no interest in wealth or fame. The consequences for overstepping boundaries would come at a steep cost. Witnessing his rebellious stance, Li was suddenly overwhelmed by a fierce, fiery rage. Simultaneously, his bald bodyguard sprang into action, swiftly conjuring a protective shield. No one outside became aware of the disturbance happening within. A heated battle erupted between the two as they traded powerful strikes with relentless energy. Both unleashed their full strength as they attacked each other. A powerful shockwave erupted, forcefully hurling them in opposite directions. Didn't have a chance to respond. Li delivered a swift, powerful kick that struck his opponent with force, sending him crashing down to the ground. Blood suddenly gushed from his mouth in a violent spray. Li sneered, certain that the other person finally recognized their position. The bald guard stood quietly, lost in contemplation. He quietly speculated that the child was likely an A-rank physical type awakened. He possessed formidable fighting skills and an unbreakable willpower, making him untouchable to the average person. On this particular day, he faced Li Young, an S-rank competitor renowned for exceptional talent, making victory seem impossible for him. At that instant, something seemed out of place, was moving faster and faster. He quickly moved closer and drove his fist directly into Li's face with a powerful punch. The force of the blow launched him several dozen meters through the air. The bald guard let out a sharp breath, his eyes widening with shock as he realized that the young master was being overpowered. Terror flooded Li Young's face as his eyes grew wide. No matter how hard he tried, his limbs remained frozen in place. The observer wondered about the situation, questioning why the ability, known for boosting physical strength in battles, did not seem to be working as expected. At last, the effects began to show. In the past, had gained 3 abilities by preying on others: the power to turn things to stone, the talent to become unseen, and the skill to render things numb. Initially, he had not exhausted his supply, reasoning that a C-rank's numbing effect would be ineffective against the defenses of someone with S-rank strength. Due to the expansive reach of fire-based attacks, invisibility was not a dependable defense for him. Predation remained his secret weapon, something he would never deploy without careful consideration. He decided that the best approach was to fight up close, allowing the paralyzing toxin to slowly work its way into Li's system. With every blow, the poison seeped further into the body, becoming a force so potent that not even someone of S-rank could withstand its effects. In time, it would leave him utterly unable to move. Moved forward, taking one careful step after another. The bald guard looked on, stunned, unable to believe what he was seeing. In his mind, he recognized the fighter's brilliance. Somehow, this person was overcoming the difference in rank by relying solely on raw fighting skill. The battle still raged on. Li Young clenched his jaw in determination. He recognized his opponent's strength, yet remained confident that he could not be beaten. He reached into his pocket and revealed a shimmering stone with magical properties. In the blink of an eye, he closed his fingers around it and squeezed until it shattered. In front of a towering giant wreathed in flames suddenly appeared. The character prepared to reveal their true strength, ready to demonstrate abilities that had remained hidden until now. As the flames soared high before him, found himself forced to weave and dart, desperately avoiding the relentless blaze. The giant's burning fist slammed down with tremendous force, sprang upward, his body lifting off the ground. He responded by launching a punch of his own. The giants unleashed a huge fireball, hurling it directly at him. The opposing sides crashed into each other with tremendous force. The intensity of the flames quickly overwhelmed the stone barrier, causing it to break apart in an instant. A deafening explosion sent hurtling through the air, flinging him several dozen meters from where he had stood. The bald guard instantly identified the ability. It belonged to the young master, his S-rank skill called Heart of Flame. But at this stage, Li Young was unable to completely harness its strength. At that moment, he realized the object was a magic stone, a mana amplifier stone forged from the heart of a monster. In a heartbeat, it caused the magical energy to increase many times over. Even so, possessing such an item would allow him to wield a genuine S-rank ability. At any second, the immense surge of mana threatened to turn against him, putting his life in grave danger. Li Young remained completely indifferent. Just then, mana managed to stand up again. Once more, the character was knocked to the ground by a blazing, powerful punch. When he fell to the ground, Lee's anger exploded beyond his ability to contain it. Upon witnessing the situation unfold, the bald guard quickly charged in its direction. He urgently called out, telling anyone still alive to escape immediately. To his utter surprise, reacted by landing a powerful punch. The battle was far from finished, and retreat was not an option in their mind. Without wasting a moment, he gulped down multiple recovery potions in rapid succession. The man smirked in recognition of the other's S-rank abilities, deciding that he would also give his best effort. In another location, Minister Go updated the association president on the current state of the academy. The president's eyes widened in disbelief as he studied the figures, struggling to accept that the numbers before him could possibly be accurate. Li Jie held the top spot with a score of 1,900, while Yi Young followed closely at 2,300. Both of them had achieved S-rank awakenings. Despite lacking formal training, their abilities already matched those of nearly A-rank players, placing them on par with the esteemed class from Nation J. They stood among the elite competitors from Nation J, recognized as one of their finest players. On her very first attempt, her awakening test scores soared past 2,500 points. Go spoke in a hushed tone, describing as a true monster, even among others like him. He wondered if perhaps his ability had been misunderstood. Regardless of the situation, Minister Go resolved to verify the truth personally. At that very instant, the bald guard gazed on in shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. Had begun drawing the fiery energy away from Li, pulling the flames into himself. Li Young stood in disbelief, struggling to accept the outcome. He had been defeated by, of all people. Frustration surged through him as his voice echoed across the group's territory. Before them stood an individual who had awakened to the rare S rank. He delivered his most powerful blow, but faced it with unwavering composure. The character showed no concern for the other person's rank or importance, introduced himself as the one who possessed the strength of kings. As soon as he unleashed his ability, a surge of red energy burst forth and completely engulfed Li. A tremendous blast erupted, shaking the surroundings with its overwhelming noise. The stadium stood in complete destruction, nothing left but shattered remnants. Li fell to the ground, overcome by exhaustion and loss. His gaze sharpened with shock as he recognized Hoon Du, a player ranked at the impressive a level. Hoon Du unexpectedly yanked Li away from the draining energy just as the predation began, managed to take in Li's ability without any trouble. The bald guard raised his voice, warning everyone that the young man was the successor of the group and that any further defiance would lead to severe repercussions. Remained calm, showing no signs of worry. He wondered if his expression revealed any hint of fear. He never meant to take Li's life, yet he believed consequences were necessary because he was the heir. He declared in a chilly tone that his life carried a value of no less than 10 billion. The blast that erupted within the arena quickly captured the focus of everyone nearby. Yi Young immediately identified the unique mana and fiery energy, realizing it belonged to Li Young. A sense of dread washed over her as she considered the possibility that he was engaged in battle with. Not long after, she hurried in the direction of the stadium, her mind weighed down by remorse. She realized she ought to have intervened with Li sooner. She silently pleaded for to return unharmed. The setting changed, revealing frozen with shock and unable to believe what he was seeing. The person noticed the newcomer's arrival and appeared relieved, explaining that help was needed to transport an injured individual to the infirmary. She struggled to make sense of the recent events, maintained a steady tone as he responded, suggesting that the person most likely tumbled down the stairs and had instructed her to keep his visit a secret from everyone else. He spun around and walked away, finally let out a breath of relief, feeling grateful that the situation was now under control. He quietly wondered to himself what had just happened. The character's charm increased by 5 points, and a new ability called Heart of the Monarch, ranked at C, was obtained. The character wondered whether charm was typically considered a trait for entertainers. After preying on Li Jie, a sense of confusion arose about why this new development occurred, and why it wasn't a Heart of Flame. The Heart of the Monarch enhanced the abilities of everyone on the same team. A unique ability like that truly belonged to Li. A sense of amazement filled the air as the observer realized just how extraordinary these abilities were. Recognizing that talent like this was almost unheard of. The ability had the potential to influence everyone's skills in the group, and could also merge seamlessly with any other ability. A wave of disbelief washed over them as they realized just how fortunate they had become. Just then, a handful of vehicles abruptly halted with screeching tires right before. Minister, a representative of the player association, emerged from the vehicle as its passenger. Despite the flood of questions racing through his mind, his curiosity centered on a single pressing concern. He desperately wanted to understand what had just taken place in the stadium. In another location, the bald bodyguard gave a full account of the situation to the president of the group. The woman expressed disbelief, finding it almost laughable that anyone would ask her to purchase the life of the man who had harmed her son. Not long after, the chairman decided decided to accept what had asked for. However, feeling that the situation had escalated, he realized he must now restore his sense of honor. With a quick snap of his fingers, he set events into motion. Out of nowhere, he found himself facing two unexpected individuals. The bald guard's face lost all its color as he hesitated, troubled by the order. He struggled to voice his concern, thinking that the person in question was only a child. The speaker demanded silence, expressing a strong dislike for those they considered ineffective. The man standing before them was Lee Young, who held the position of president at Group and possessed the rank of an S-class player. At the same time, his expression revealed his confusion in response to the minister's inquiry. He wondered whether the man meant the incident in the gym or the chaos that had broken out earlier in the lecture hall. He questioned whether the minister would really travel such a long distance for such a minor issue. He hesitantly wondered if she was referring to the recent explosion. The minister moved his head from side to side, indicating disagreement. He believed that smaller issues of that nature were typically managed by separate departments. Upon hearing those words, felt his self-assurance surge back completely. He offered a faint smile, guessing that the visitor had come to deliver his invitation for the player exam. The speaker questioned the other's certainty, wondering what gave them such confidence. The reason was clear for anyone to see. As displayed his complete statistics, those nearby were stunned into silence, unable to believe what they were seeing. His statistics had surpassed his previous records, leaving everyone in awe. People around him began to quietly question his identity, wondering who this mysterious individual could be. The setting changed, revealing as he informed his cousin about his decision to take the player exam. Upon hearing those words, he stopped moving, rooted to the spot in shock. Returning to the primary concern, it seemed probable that Group would take care of the situation at the stadium, which would help alleviate Minister Ghost's doubts regarding. At the moment, his attention had to be on getting ready for the player exam that was just a month ahead. Just then, his focus shifted when his phone began to ring. At the same time, two shadowy individuals observed his home from afar, hidden from sight. Exchanging hushed words, they puzzled over the presence of association members protecting an ordinary teenager. It seemed likely that the boy was participating in the upcoming exams. These mysterious watchers were none other than the notorious Black and White brothers. Black was gifted with both the ability to become invisible and to strengthen his body, whereas White's talents lay solely in vanishing from view. Their intention was clear. They wanted to witness the power of a genuine awakened one. A sudden, muffled noise echoed from behind, catching off guard. Frustration flashed across his face as he quickly turned to see what had caused the disturbance, his mind racing with questions about the stranger's identity. He responded with an unexpected blow, offered a slight smile, revealing himself as the very high school student who had been the topic of conversation. Several hours before, the ball guard had been left speechless when made his request. The amount of 10 billion was far beyond any decision he could make lightly. Was well aware of that fact. Still, he simply wished to see the man make an effort to achieve it. In an effort to avoid being betrayed, he insisted that the guard don a unique piece of clothing. The Covenant of the Awakened was a powerful agreement, created using awakened mana, that delivered punishment to anyone who dared violate its terms. In addition to handling the $10 billion, the guard was responsible for managing the situation at the stadium and making sure to alert ahead of time if anyone intended to seek retaliation. Discovered that the assassin had arrived when the guards at the ball delivered their report. The adversaries began their relentless attack with intense force, slipped out of the way with ease, his movements as silent and fluid as a passing shadow. In a sudden burst of movement, the man launched a strong punch toward his foe, only to have it dodged effortlessly. Swiftly, the assassin retaliated, swinging with force, but his strike found only empty space. For a moment, the assassin stood completely still, caught off guard, had already positioned himself higher than him in. He remarked in a chilly tone that, apart from her ability to vanish, she possessed no other notable skills. At the same time, the leader of the Night Stalker Guild held a conversation with the president of the association, discussing the details of the upcoming exam for players. She brought up a fascinating rumor she had heard. According to whispers, Minister Go had left behind every S-rank awakener just to seek out one specific child. She wore a sly smile, wondering aloud how anyone could resist being curious. She found it remarkable that the minister had been compelled to get involved himself, all because of the boy's strength. Meanwhile, elsewhere, had already overpowered both assassins, leaving them utterly defeated. He gazed at the crimson light shimmering in his hand, his brow furrowed with concern. Realizing his body was overwhelmed, he understood that using predation at that moment was impossible. A few minutes passed before he contacted the minister, instructing him to take care of the situation. The minister questioned about whether he recognized his attacker, but feigned ignorance. He knew that, regardless of what he said, the truth would be too much for them to deal with. There was speculation about whether the list of exam candidates had been exposed. The minister quietly remarked that it would be necessary to strengthen security measures, remained deeply unsettled by the absence of predation. He realized that, for now, improving his own abilities would have to be his main focus. Power could only be enhanced through two methods: hunting monsters or boosting one's awakening level. Some chose to target other awakeners as their victims, but either path demanded the act of predation. Frustration welled up inside as he realized there was just a single option remaining. Resolving to move forward, he made his way toward the nation's top gym. The place was exclusive, allowing entry only to a select few. As the receptionist eyed him with suspicion, smoothly presented his one and only black card, his demeanor completely at ease. She spotted the card right away and knew exactly what it was, the SVP card from the Alchemists Guild, renowned as one of the 4 great guilds. Confusion filled her mind as she wondered how a person like him could be in possession of something so significant. There was a lingering worry that allowing him inside could lead to trouble. At that moment, someone's voice suddenly reached out to them. The gym's trainer stood before them, infamous among new members as the Iron Titan, a figure who haunted every rookie's dreams. At that moment, he stood tall, confidently showcasing the strength of every muscle in his body. Ignored him completely, not bothering to look his way. Iron Titan's mood shifted in an instant, irritation flashing across his face. The character questioned whether the other person truly believed they possessed greater strength. Keeping his composure, suggested making a wager to settle the matter, proposing that whoever lost would be responsible for covering the gym's annual membership fee. Iron Titan flashed a wide grin and wasted no time in agreeing to the proposal. The setting changed as both individuals equipped themselves with virtual reality headsets. The training was part of an online course known as Virtual Porter. Materials sourced from the depths of the abyss served as the foundation for the system's construction. The challenge required participants to transport the heaviest load they could manage, overcome a monster ranked at B level, and arrive at the finish line faster than anyone else. The challenge attracted more participants than any other activity in the gym. At the same moment, Iron Titan sprang into action before anyone else. Confronting the enormous creature, he launched his fist forward in a powerful strike. The creature lost its life in a single, swift moment, realized that the burden he bore surpassed anything he had anticipated. Considering his progress, he felt confident that winning a year's worth of gym membership would be no challenge at all. Just then, his gaze was drawn to an unexpected burst of brightness. A swift shape darted across the scene in a single heartbeat, swiftly reversed the situation. Confronted by the oncoming horde of monsters, he kept his cool and showed no signs of distress, delivering a blow at maximum strength. In a single moment, all traces of the monsters disappeared. Iron Titan stood frozen in disbelief, unable to process what he was seeing. After a brief pause, Iron Titan at last crossed the finish line, spoke in a low voice, expressing that he thought the match had gone well, but he reminded the other person to honor their promise. The setting transitioned to the morning, when the player examination was scheduled to take place. Talented individuals, representing all age groups from around the country, had come together. One of the fighters everyone looked forward to seeing was Iron Fist Young, renowned for his almost invincible skills in close combat. Leet, an accomplished druid with an A rank, stood out for his exceptional fighting skills. Shin, known as the Thunder God, and an S-rank hero from stood undefeated. Among all the contenders, Young stood out as the most prominent, earning the title of Saint Star and possessing the rare status of an S-rank awakener. A number of exceptionally talented players had also entered the competition. Meanwhile, a novice journalist found herself having difficulty conducting her interview. A reporter working for SY Entertainment felt worry building inside her. She knew that failing to seize this opportunity could cost her the job she had worked so hard to secure. At that moment, a surge of panic swept over her, gradually came into view within the lens of her camera. She glanced at the crowd, frustration clear on her face as she wondered how anyone was expected to enter with so many people blocking the way. Once the interview concluded, quickly made his way to the location where the exam was being held. The exam hall overflowed with students, each seat filled, and the entire room thrummed with excitement. Yi Young's expression was one of surprise, clearly unprepared for the sudden appearance of. To her, he appeared transformed from the person she once knew. Responded nonchalantly, explaining that he had only exercised a bit. Despite hearing whispers about his awakening, she was still in disbelief at how much he had transformed in just 30 days. Just as she was preparing to inquire about the true events that had taken place in the gymnasium, a broadcast echoed through the air, greeting the next generation of young challengers and welcoming them to the future. The selection process would focus on choosing the most qualified individuals from the awakened to take on the role of players. The initial rule for the exam was straightforward. Participants needed to gather number tags. Every contestant wore a tag on their chest, and anyone who lost theirs would be instantly removed from the competition. To move forward, participants needed to gather 5 tags within a strict 1-hour time frame. Almost immediately, the earth began to shake with intense force. Before their eyes, the whole testing area changed dramatically. Every tactic was permitted except for taking a life. With those rules set, the test officially commenced. A majority of the participants had already set their sights on their initial target, Young, the S-rank awakener. However, it was evident that she had been far more capable than they had anticipated. With just one strike, she sent everyone sprawling across the floor. The exam proctors, observing through their monitors, stared in awe. No one doubted why she was considered the pride of the saints, her abilities truly remarkable. One observer remarked that the current group of test takers appeared noticeably more capable than those from the previous year. Among those eagerly awaited, Shin stood out as the S-rank awakener representing. 20 minutes slipped by, and still nobody had dared to approach him. Meanwhile, the crowd buzzed with speculation, trying to determine whether Yi Young or Shin held greater strength. Minister Go closely observed every move made, fully aware that the young man's abilities far surpassed what most considered possible. The minister quietly speculated that would have no trouble passing the exam if he was the one being tested. With anticipation, the minister mentally urged to demonstrate his true abilities. The following moment caught him off guard, causing him to jerk back in astonishment. Faced Young, an A-rank awakener, and proved himself to be just as skilled. She began to wonder if her earlier opinion of him had been mistaken. Found himself steadily losing ground as an A-ranked fighter forced him backward. Not a single attack could be avoided. Before long, the minister understood Sin's intentions. Both fighters exchanged powerful punches and kicks, neither willing to back down. Following a series of unyielding assaults from, eventually raised his voice, declaring that stone skin could never match the strength of a steel body. He questioned the reasoning behind deliberately enduring the blows, wondering what message was being sent by such actions. At that instant, mana surged, proving that taking a risk could be rewarding. Despite a month spent training, half of his limiters remained sealed, showing that his stats had not yet reached the required level. He could improve his skills only by forcing himself to endure the most extreme physical challenges. Every battle pushed him to his limits, turning each clash into a lesson. His quest to improve never reached a finish line. The process was endless. The action was completed with a powerful 4-strike sequence, fell to the ground without warning, while finally obtained his second numbered tag. Minister Go let out a loud, unexpected laugh, his behavior once again proving how unusual he truly was. The idea of applying training techniques during an actual combat test seemed impossible to believe. What truly mattered was that if his only goal was to increase his stats, the previous fight had likely exhausted the majority of his energy. In order to save his strength, he would likely begin targeting less powerful foes from now on. In the next instant, surprise flashed across the minister's face as his eyes grew wide in disbelief. As the scene unfolded, the onlookers staring at the screen became increasingly uneasy. They couldn't believe that Amir, with only a C rank, would dare to take on someone with an S rank. To them, it seemed like a reckless act bordering on madness. Found himself directly confronting Shin, who was known as the Thunder God. Shun's chest was covered in 147 shining number tags, drawing everyone's attention. Fixing his gaze on Shun, confidently announced his intention to win, determined to prove himself by defeating Shun. With unstoppable intensity, the pair collided in a fierce confrontation. When Shin flicked his finger, bolts of lightning hurtled toward, who evaded them with sharp, precise movements. Additional lightning bolts shot toward, yet he managed to avoid every single one. He launched a powerful kick infused with the force of stone, but his attack proved ineffective, leaving no visible impact. Shin gave a satisfied smirk, showing his approval. Anyone standing this near to him would have noticed the subtle change in his expression. A deafening crash echoed in the air, flew backward, thrown off his feet by a surge of electricity. The sheer power of Thunder God had surpassed even his own expectations. A powerful, rumbling energy enveloped him, effortlessly deflecting all incoming strikes while granting him the strength to battle enemies at any distance. Considered his options, trying to find a way to overcome the formidable defense without relying on predation. Right then, Shin rushed ahead, launching an attack, moved to the side with swift agility. The Thunder God blocked his path, delivering a quick, powerful kick that stopped him from getting away. A relentless assault followed, forcing to fall back and evade the attacks. At that moment, Shin lifted both hands into the air. A cascade of lightning struck from above. The Thunder God unleashed a series of strikes, each one accompanied by a cruel, mocking laugh that served to ridicule his opponent. Without hesitation, summoned the power of stone skin, sending a colossal stone fist crashing toward his opponent. With a swift flick of his wrist, Shin caused it to break apart in an instant. A sudden, intense burst of light engulfed the arena, leaving unable to see anything at all. At the same time, the Thunder God lifted his right hand into the air. In the blink of an eye, a fearsome bolt of lightning crashed down, hitting directly. Despite being struck by lightning, managed to withstand the pain, relying solely on his determination to persevere. Shin's expression revealed genuine surprise. He had believed that all the other participants were nothing more than unworthy competitors. It seemed that no one but Yi Young had the ability to match his skills. He never imagined that a person like this could be real. Just then, a tiny rock suddenly flew in his direction. The blow landed directly on his forehead. He jerked back, startled, just as suddenly materialized right behind him. With a mighty sweep, a shower of tiny stones struck the Thunder God's form, hitting with tremendous force. Shun struggled to make sense of the situation, unable to understand how the attacks had managed to hit their mark. The statement held up. Typically, the power of wasn't enough to break through his protective protective lightning barrier. Any stone, no matter how strong, would crumble as soon as it collided with his energy. However, the testing arena wasn't ordinary. It had been built from unique substances designed to endure the force of players' abilities. Although these materials could fracture, they would not completely fall apart. Had managed to break past the Thunder God's defenses by skillfully turning those fragments into weapons. Shin was deemed unworthy of being a rival, as the speaker believed there was no competition between them. Launched a powerful punch that instantly knocked out his opponent, securing a decisive victory. The audience stared in shock, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Against all expectations, someone with a C rank had managed to defeat an S rank opponent. Questions buzzed through the air as everyone tried to figure out the identity of. Minister Go exhaled in relief, his eyes filled with admiration as he regarded the remarkable child before him. However, within seconds, a frown creased his forehead once more. Meanwhile, fixed his gaze on the number tags that lay strewn over the floor. He simply needed to bide his time until the test was over. Without warning, a spear made of ice hurtled directly at him, sprang upward just in time to avoid the attack, his expression tightening in concern. Confusion flickered across his face as he wondered why their watchful gaze had appeared in such an unlikely spot. However, what he saw next completely took him by surprise. Snowflakes erupted in great numbers, swiftly covering the arena in a layer of white. Within moments, an immense field of ice had appeared. From the heart of this frozen expanse, Yi Young emerged, moving at a deliberate pace. Eyes grew large with surprise as he wondered to himself about her sudden presence, questioning if she had been observing everything from the start. Maintained a composed demeanor as he expressed his belief that immense strength demanded a strong sense of duty. He considered the reckless use of one's abilities to be nothing short of savage behavior. Strength was undeniable, and even his opponent had to acknowledge it. No one, not even she, had anticipated that he would overcome Shin with such surprising ease. The question arose, wondering if that was the very technique employed to defeat Li Young. In the blink of an eye, massive columns of ice crashed down from overhead, quickly followed by a barrage of sharp descending spikes. Moved quickly, trying to avoid danger and stay alive. Suddenly, Yi Young stepped into his path and landed a quick, powerful kick that hurled him backward. Her voice was icy as she confronted him, recalling how she had trusted him in the past. She had believed was unlike Li Young and wouldn't make rash choices just to benefit himself. After witnessing the recent battle, complete understanding finally dawned on them. Li Young and Bei both suffered injuries at the hands. A towering column of ice burst upward from the earth, was thrown backward, landing hard on the ground. Yi Young pressed on, insisting that those people remained hospitalized because misused authority. She believed their injuries were their own doing and decided not to report to the association, but she expressed her hope that he would choose to withdraw from the exam on his own. The speaker believed that the other person was unworthy of becoming a player, retorted sharply, thinking how ironic it was for a woman who had failed to stop Li Young to lecture others about strength and duty. In the end, the character realized that the other person simply wished to get rid of them, suspecting that fear of their abilities was the true reason. Upon hearing those words, his face grew resolute. Determination settled within her as she finalized her decision. Magic spiraled around her, and in an instant, a gigantic hammer of ice formed within her grasp. Stood on the edge, realizing that this was the moment he would lose his footing. Stood frozen, unable to respond when confronted with such immense strength. Following countless uses of his stone skin ability, his energy had been completely drained. Stealth offered no protection from such a widespread assault. Despite the monarch's heart being fully awakened, it remained powerless in the face of the current predicament. The warrior found himself unable to activate his abilities, no matter how desperately he tried. Exhaustion had sapped his energy, leaving him without the strength to add paralysis poison to his attacks. Faced with this dire situation, he realized there was just one choice left. Fueled by newfound resolve, rushed directly toward Young. Young unleashed a powerful strike, sending a brilliant surge of white light sweeping across the arena. As the spectators anxiously waited to see the outcome, the unexpected scene that appeared left them all stunned and motionless. The fog gradually lifted, revealing what lay beyond. As the scene unfolded, two figures appeared, seemingly locked in a kiss. Nobody could have predicted what would happen when raised her frost hammer and brought it down. Sprang forward, closing the distance between them in an instant. The motivation for that unexpected action: he intended to use his toxin to paralyze his target. Using a status ailment skill at a short distance made it much more likely to succeed, thanks to the effects of close-range internal transmission. For this reason, forced her to ingest blood laced with a paralyzing poison. Taking into account that an S-rank awakening naturally grants strong resistance, the decision had been a bold and risky move. Fortunately, the strategy succeeded. As the announcement echoed through the arena speakers, it was declared that the initial stage of the player examination had concluded, instructing all participants to stay in their current positions. Once the test ended, medical staff swiftly attended to every wounded participant. Despite being struck by a toxin that caused paralysis, Young managed to keep hold of her number tag tag, allowing her to successfully complete the player exam. Despite having just 7 tags, captured everyone's focus by managing to overcome both Shin and. He quietly considered the effectiveness of the healing, thinking it wasn't bad and wondering if he ought to try devouring one himself. While reflected on that idea, without warning, Shin sprang toward the other person, was surprised to find him in this place, having never imagined they would cross paths here. This time, the speaker was determined not to let their opponent succeed with such obvious schemes. A sudden surge of energy sent the two of them flying backward from the force of the collision. The other candidates gathered around, their faces bright with anticipation, as they enthusiastically rooted for the competitors in the duel. Without warning, a bolt of lightning split the space between the two of them. Shin raised his voice, insisting that they resolve the matter openly and honestly. Right as their confrontation was on the verge of beginning, the story started. A powerful, unseen energy swept across the arena, pressing Shin flat against the floor. Pain ripped through him as he twisted and squirmed beneath the crushing force. His eyes widened with shock as he tried to process what he was seeing. A man with glasses approached them at a leisurely pace. The speaker grew frustrated, wishing the two would settle down and stop arguing for just a moment. Instantly knew who the man was. Park Song-jin, renowned among players as one of the rare S-ranks. He stood among the association's most skilled members, with a promising future that would one day earn him the prestigious double S rank. Park's eyes widened in disbelief as he realized that someone managed to remain upright in his presence. A surge of energy erupted without warning. A crushing force seemed to press down on from head to toe, making it hard for him to move or breathe. He came to understand just how enormous the difference was between S-rank awakeners and true players. Even Park found himself taken aback, realizing that only a handful of seasoned fighters could withstand such intense pressure. Right when he was preparing to apply more force, a physician entered the room and intervened to prevent his actions. Following a short yet firm admonishment, Park shifted his gaze toward the other boy and inquired about his name, directing his question to. Introduced himself by name, the speaker observed the person before them, noting with curiosity that this was the individual who had managed to overcome 2 S-rank opponents. The only way forward was for them to aim for the rank of S-level player themselves. Park assured them that he would be there at the end, waiting. After saying this, Park turned and left. The focus moved to the next stage of the player examination. The instructions were clear. They needed to walk through the gate behind them and enter a D-rank dungeon. Shock rippled through the crowd as everyone realized what stood before them. A genuine dungeon. Every group was made up of 5 participants, each guided by a player examiner who was responsible for helping them navigate and conquer the dungeon. Every action they took within the space would be closely assessed, including their fighting abilities, alertness, understanding, and capacity to provide medical assistance. The association promised to provide all the essential weapons and supplies needed. The examiner instructed everyone to proceed through the gate one at a time, maintained a composed demeanor, trusting that the presence of experienced players would keep the situation under control. If they avoided encountering the dual dungeon known as the S-rank nightmare, there would be no issues. The initial discovery occurred during a D-ranked player examination, when the whole exploration group was eliminated in an instant. After that incident, authorities prohibited entry into numerous unconfirmed dungeons. Wished he could prevent the event before it unfolded. He doubted anyone would trust his warning, though. With these thoughts, he reminded himself that his current mission required his full attention. He believed that if someone else uncovered the dual dungeon before he did, he would still have a chance to make it out alive. Upon entering the dungeon, he observed the group of 5 individuals assembled ahead of him. After that, a heavy silence lingered in the room. Overseeing the exam was Ma, an A-rank player renowned as the pioneer who first uncovered the existence of the dual dungeon. The setting changed as the group stepped into the dungeon, their faces set with fierce resolve. In just a few seconds, they eliminated every creature standing in their path. Even the examiner's expression softened with a proud smile, clearly impressed by his performance in his very first true fight. The examiner seemed certain that would soon qualify for a player license. Despite this, struggled to accept the situation. He couldn't help but wonder how he ended up being placed in this particular team. There was no doubt in their mind. The ring on his finger perfectly matched the sage's ring from the initial dual dungeon incident. An extraordinary artifact increased every statistic tenfold. The thought of facing an S-rank dungeon without the advantage of the predation skill made him certain he wouldn't survive. He realized that he needed a strategy. It was crucial to prevent anyone from discovering the dual dungeon before time ran out. The chance presented itself earlier than he had anticipated. While the others argued over which direction to follow, abruptly sprinted down the corridor to the right. The proctor jerked in surprise, clearly unsettled by his impulsive move and concerned about the risks of acting alone. Found himself backed into a corner, unable to make any other decision. He knew he had to keep the existence of the dual dungeon a secret from them at all costs. Almost immediately after making his choice, he found himself wishing he had done things differently. Before the team, a glowing portal materialized, casting its light across the room. Inside the dungeon, a second gate appeared, prompting confusion among the group. Immediately immediately identified what it was. This was the infamous dual dungeon. Despite all the twists and turns they had taken, they found themselves right back where they started. One of the teammates approached to take a closer look, swiftly intervened, urging him to pause for a moment. The sudden emergence of a hole within the dungeon seemed strange to them, as if something unusual was happening. The group wondered if it would be best to inform the association before taking any further action. The proctor appeared uncertain, clearly unaccustomed to witnessing such an unusual event. Following a short moment of silence, he made up his mind to go inside and see what was happening for himself. The energy surrounding the gate registered at only a D-rank level, and the presence of an A-rank player made the situation appear well under control. There was also the possibility that this was a limited-time event, and whoever discovered it first might receive a significant point reward. Recoiled in surprise, he wondered if that action went against the rules. The examiner quickly countered, thinking that someone completely unfamiliar with teamwork had no place questioning the rules. The others quickly shifted their attention toward him, their tones sharp and accusatory as they expressed their disapproval. The proctor quickly snapped their fingers. An intense burst of white light flooded the surroundings, illuminating everything in its path. As eyes fluttered open, the sight before him sent a chill through his heart. The scene before them was nothing like what one would expect from a typical D-rank dungeon. A massive statue rose up in front of the group, casting a long shadow over them. Uncertainty spread among the team as they exchanged puzzled glances and whispered to one another, cautioned everyone in a firm tone to stay silent, signaling that their visitors had already arrived. From the dimness, a pair of shadowy figures gradually step into the faint light. As the creatures emerged fully into sight, a wave of fear washed over the crowd. Standing before them were formidable A-rank monsters known as Death Knights. The proctor ordered everyone to take their battle positions immediately. The creatures charged ahead with all their might, closing the distance in an instant. The team managed to dodge just in time, narrowly escaping the incoming blow. The proctor wasted no time in distributing tasks to everyone. He relied on his magical abilities to immobilize his opponent. The rest of the group watched carefully, waiting for the perfect moment to make their move. The shield bearer positioned himself at the very front, ready to defend against the incoming attack. Following an exhausting battle, the team succeeded in defeating the formidable A-rank monster. None among them had ever thought it possible to overcome a foe of such magnitude. At the very moment, they enjoyed the excitement of their win. A sudden wave of shock swept over them, causing them to stop in their tracks. A fresh group of Death Knights advanced gradually in their direction. Shock swept through the group, draining the color from their faces as disbelief settled over them. Sensed that something wasn't quite right, several minutes passed before the group successfully defeated the next group of foes. At this point, exhaustion gripped everyone as they struggled to catch their breath. Despite their fatigue, the creatures kept coming, their numbers increasing with every new attack, each surge bringing double the foes of the last. It seemed inevitable that none of them would make it out alive at this pace. Just then, broke the silence by mentioning that he had observed something unusual. The proctor's brow furrowed in concern as he observed the student. He wondered to himself why this boy showed no signs of exhaustion despite battling for so long. It became clear to him as well that the gate presented a serious threat. None of them realized that their survival depended on his unique ability. Heart of the Monarch had pushed their physical and mental abilities far beyond what they thought possible, keeping them alive when they otherwise would have perished. The character wondered what the other person thought was unusual, answered that it was only a feeling, yet he believed those events had not been Death Knights. The rest of the group looked at him with shock, refusing to believe what they had just heard. He realized that he needed to see the truth with his own eyes. He lifted his massive sword high and rushed at the approaching monsters. While his foes closed in from all sides, he sprang upward, soaring above their reach. He flung his sword directly toward the towering statue in front of him. A deafening noise filled the air as the statue broke apart, its fragments scattering in every direction. In a single moment, every Death Knight disappeared without a trace. The surroundings twisted and warped with intense force, rapidly transforming their shape. The scene revealed itself to be nothing more than a deceptive trick of the mind. They realized they had stumbled into a mirage trap, one designed to exhaust them by forcing battles against illusory foes that weren't really there. The group struggled to come to terms with the reality before them. Despite giving their all in the battle, their efforts had ultimately been in vain. The proctor's expression darkened with suspicion. He pointed out that the test taker had never actually faced the Death Knights, and questioned how they had managed to realize it was a trap. Responded in a monotone, explaining that it was simply instinct and insisting that real Death Knights possessed far more strength than that. He urgently cautioned the group that they had to leave immediately if they wanted to survive, fearing the place would soon become deadly. Even with the mirage trap gone, the situation failed to get any better. The appearance of the double dungeon had drastically altered the layout inside the dungeon. Following the lengthy conflict, the group found themselves worn out and covered in bruises, their energy completely spent. The group realized that if they wanted to survive, they had to locate the way out before time ran out. Following a short period of searching, the group came across an enormous door. Although opening it involved significant risk, they realized that, given the circumstances, they were left with no alternative. When the gate slowly swung open with a loud creak, the examiner's expression grew tense and rigid. Kneeling just beyond the doorway was a lone Death Knight. When it seemed that everything had finally come to an end, a horde of Death Knights suddenly appeared, stepping out from the darkness. Firelight erupted without warning, casting sudden brightness into the darkness. A deep red glow spread throughout the hall, illuminating every corner. Both of them shook with an uncontrollable shiver running through their bodies. The room was crowded with countless Death Knights, their numbers stretching into the hundreds and forming an intimidating legion before them. A powerful, resonant voice thundered through the air, declaring that the foolish humans had finally made their appearance. The duel was set to commence. The boss insisted that each fight be a deadly duel between two opponents. As the massive crowd surged toward them, a wave of fear rippled through the group. Made an effort to soothe their nerves, 3 members of his team spun around and ran away, gripped by fear. Preferring survival over risk, they chose to head back to the entrance instead of facing danger that could cost them their lives. In the blink of an eye, a Death Knight's powerful swing knocked them to the ground, leaving them battered and bleeding on the cold floor. The last pair stood motionless, their faces pale with terror as fear rooted them to the spot. Announced his intention to distract the threat and urged everyone else to search for a way out immediately. Without warning, Ma retaliated, sending him stumbling backward through the doorway. The opening was then closed off completely as a barrier of magic formed, locking it in place. Gazed ahead, his eyes wide with shock, unable to comprehend the reason behind the unexpected action. He quietly admitted to himself that achieving S-rank player status had always been his dream. Despite pouring all his effort into his training, every attempt seemed to push him even farther away from achieving what he wanted. He had always thought that conquering the dual dungeon would make his dream come true, yet reality proved to be much more complex than he had imagined. Confronted by the unyielding onslaught of the Death Knight, lifting his sword high, he swept it through the air in a powerful X-shaped motion, instantly felling one of his opponents. At that instant, he realized that genuinely had what it took to rise to the level of an S-rank player. He hoped would lead the injured to safety before it became too late. It was the responsibility of a proctor to put an end to the havoc caused by these monsters. As he glanced over his shoulder at the place where his teammates had fallen, he noticed with a sinking heart that they had already disappeared. Without warning, a thunderous blast echoed from behind him. He spun around quickly, coming face to face with countless ranks of Death Knights lined up before him. The proctor fell to the ground, blood spreading out beneath him, felt his chest tighten with fear as he stared at the horrifying scene before him. One of the Death Knights lifted its sword in a deliberate motion, signaling a challenge to a duel. A sudden stillness. He noticed a subtle sparkle reflecting from the ground. The ring belonged to Tao Haksage. In the following moment, the Death Knight sprang forward, closing the distance between them with a swift attack. Quickly moved out of the way, shifting his body to the side to avoid the incoming threat. Swiftly, they reached down and grabbed the ring that had dropped to the ground. At this point, it had become his last chance. As soon as he slid the ring onto his finger, a powerful energy burst forth from his body, instantly destroying the nearby monsters. The boss stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend the sheer force before him. A luminous notification materialized in front of him, informing him that the sage's ring was now active. His attributes had increased by 10%. The requirements had been fulfilled, and the predation skill was now unlocked. Crimson energy surged outward in a powerful wave, engulfing all the Death Knights in the chamber and erasing them in mere moments. Simultaneously, a relentless horde of foes advanced in his direction, quickly used his predation ability, forming a barrier that stopped them from moving forward. In one swift motion, he sent them flying backward without hesitation. However, hunting by itself did not satisfy the need. Devouring the prey required a whole 10 seconds. At that moment, he was forced to use every ability he had mastered. He battled with every ounce of strength he possessed, knowing that survival depended on giving his all. Without warning, a spear glowing with a purple hue slammed into the ground just ahead of him. He was so stunned that his heart felt like it almost stopped beating. What happened after that took him entirely by surprise, leaving him in shock. A tremendous wave of magical energy began to build up around the boss as he concentrated his power. In an instant, a multitude of spears hovered in the air overhead. Suddenly, a torrent of objects descended from above, all targeting him with unrelenting precision. In a desperate attempt to escape harm, dashed ahead with every ounce of energy he had. Spotting a fleeting chance, he directed the force of predation right toward the boss. The boss simply lifted a hand and wiped it away with ease. In a chilling tone, the boss acknowledged the other's strength, but dismissed it as their only noteworthy quality. He launched his weapon forward, delivering a powerful and destructive strike. His body was flung through the air, landing with a harsh impact in a pool stained red with blood. The boss questioned in his mind what source had granted so much strength. The creature released the roar of the Night King, sending a thunderous blast directly toward him. A mysterious power suddenly welled up inside, stopping some of the force in its tracks. The boss growled, sensing that this person was no typical human. It was already aware that he had the unusual ability to comprehend their language. The speaker asked the other person to explain the true nature of their ability. While the boss grew more powerful, his body edged dangerously close to giving out. Just then, Silhouette materialized in front of him again. He stood amidst the bodies of his defeated teammates. He abruptly noticed that everything remained exactly as it had been earlier. There was no difference at all. He remained unaware of the true nature of predation and the reasons behind his ability to comprehend the speech of monsters. Despite acquiring both power and chances, he remained unable to alter his circumstances. He wondered in a faint voice why the king had granted him such power. At that moment, he heard a recognizable voice softly speaking near his ear. A shadowy silhouette took shape in front of him, shrouded in deep, impenetrable darkness. The voice, steady and commanding yet gentle, asserted that it had never granted him any power. Instead, it expressed a deep respect for his determination and rebellious spirit. According to the voice, there was no need for him to become someone different. He only needed to continue pressing onward. In the following moment, suddenly opened his eyes wide, as the boss himself to strike with a deadly attack. A torrent of red energy exploded outward from, radiating in all directions. Whatever their hands came into contact with vanished, swallowed up until it no longer existed. At last, the boss realized he was in trouble. He began pushing his abilities past their normal limits, desperate to turn the tide. Unleashed a surge of magic, the force bursting skyward with the intensity of a raging tempest. Upon witnessing the scene, the boss's face lit up with a crooked, eager smile. The creature hurled its weapon with tremendous force, determined to smash its opponent. This time, however, stopped the attack with ease. He spoke with a chilling tone, challenging the listener to experience the mysterious power firsthand, instead of simply asking about it. A fresh wave of energy coursed through him as his predation ability advanced to rank B. A powerful surge of energy collided directly with the boss. The object shot forward, covering a distance of several dozen meters in an instant, reached over and took hold of the massive sword lying at his side. He materialized in front of the boss in an instant and launched a fierce, unyielding attack with his blade. The boss, overcome with rage, shouted loudly as his temper reached its breaking point. A whirlwind of weapons materialized, launching themselves in his direction with relentless force. Simply lifted his right hand, showing no signs of fear or disturbance. With one powerful motion, a brilliant red dragon burst forth from the attack, letting out a thunderous roar as it charged directly toward the boss. The boss stood motionless, unable to process what had just happened, quietly confessed that he was not human, claiming the extraordinary power he possessed belonged to a king. A burst of intense energy exploded outward from his body, casting a deep red glow throughout the space. The boss was utterly consumed. A system notification resounded, announcing that a new skill had been gained, the authority of the Night King. Everyone gathered outside the dungeon, their eyes fixed with worry on the luminous entrance. Once was complete, the dungeon received an official designation as Rank S. The characters could hardly believe that a dungeon previously ranked as D had abruptly transformed into an S-rank threat. At the current pace, all those trapped inside faced certain death. The situation was overwhelming for the young boy, who clearly couldn't manage it by himself. At that moment, the doorway erupted with brilliant bursts of purple light. Everyone prepared themselves anxiously, convinced that a new horde of monsters was about to appear. Rather than anything else, one lone silhouette gradually appeared from within the shining light. Had come back. Time passed, and because of his hard work, all the remaining candidates were evacuated without harm. The judges then evaluated everyone by looking at how they performed before leaving. The ones who lost their lives were given a respectful burial. The decision about who had completed the double dungeon was kept hidden by those in authority, as revealing the truth would have caused countless problems. The president of the association, along with his two top officers, completely understood the seriousness of the situation. The president faced the group, seeking their evaluation of the man's abilities. One person responded that anyone capable of clearing a double dungeon by themselves had to be at least S rank, especially if they truly completed it alone, leaving no room for doubt. Despite his achievements, one person pointed out that, considering his present rank, he remained a long way from reaching S-class status. This observation suggested that he possessed endless potential for growth. Both individuals looked at each other, silently agreeing that the child had the potential to become a valuable asset to the nation. At the same time, remained motionless, unable to comprehend what was happening. A vast horde of monsters stretched out in front of him, their sheer numbers pressing down with an intimidating force. He quietly cursed under his breath, realizing with a sense of dread that he had ended up in the abyss. A solitary person made their way forward, gradually drawing nearer from afar. A sudden realization struck him. He understood at last that the man before him was the king. All the monsters surrounding them suddenly erupted into cries of pain. With just one motion from the king's hand, everything changed. In a single moment, every one of them vanished without a trace, froze in place, overwhelmed by shock. From somewhere ahead, a powerful, resonant voice filled the air, declaring its intention to await them at the very heart of the abyss. He suddenly woke up from the nightmare, struggling to catch his breath. His heart raced as the realization hit him that what had happened was real, not just a figment of his imagination. He quietly wondered to himself what the king's words truly meant. Even S-rank monsters harbored fear toward the predatory power that came with comprehending their language. Countless unanswered questions remained. He quietly acknowledged to himself that there appeared to be no other option, and resolved that he must venture into the abyss alone. He looked over his list of skills, noticing that several B-rank abilities now shone brightly in front of him. The fierce fight with the Night King had elevated his status to rank B, just as he had anticipated. His strength had reached a level comparable to that of an S-class player. Moving at this speed, he was on track to become a key strategist for the whole country. At that moment, a noise from outside the door drew focus. Within seconds, a mysterious silhouette gradually emerged in front of him. He was now seated inside a car. He found himself questioning the reason behind the leader of the Nightwalkers Guild, one of the top 4 guilds, requesting a meeting with him. She responded with a composed tone, explaining that her purpose was to meet the person responsible for conquering the double dungeon and to offer him a ride back home. His expression made it obvious he wasn't convinced by the explanation. She released a sigh and addressed the matter directly, explaining that the third test would mirror the format of the initial simulated battle. This time, the event would take place in front of everyone. Spectators would observe every moment from their seats in the stands. Rewritten sentence. This would reveal every skill the character possessed, and once others witnessed such strength, all the guilds would begin to pursue them. The visitor explained that their reason for coming was to extend an invitation to join the Nightwalkers, promising that any desire could be fulfilled through their offer. Immediately turned down her proposal, showing no sign of uncertainty. He stated plainly that he was heading back to his house. The guild master's face darkened with worry, puzzled by certainty. Thoughts raced through his mind, wondering if a rival group had already claimed. Meanwhile, simply gave a slight shake of his head. In his eyes, every guild blended together, offering nothing unique. His only desire was to keep his freedom without any deeper reason. As he was about to walk away, she unexpectedly stepped into his path and pressed her hand firmly over his mouth. She glared at him, thinking how bold it was for a rookie player like him to refuse an offer from one of the most powerful guilds. Despite her frustration, a small smile crept onto her face. She recognized a unique quality in him that she couldn't ignore. Spoke in a low voice, showing that his daring nature hadn't changed. He mentioned, drawing a comparison to the guild master's sister. The guild master stopped in his tracks, his eyes growing wide with surprise. He silently questioned how could possibly know that information. His lips curled into a small, knowing smile as he revealed he was aware of much more, including the true name that had been taken from the guild master. A vibrant burst of green light suddenly soared upward, illuminating the sky. He unleashed a surge of energy, saturating the atmosphere with an overwhelming force that pressed down on everything around him. Even the man standing next to her furrowed his brow, silently cursing as he realized things had just taken a turn for the worse. Known by her real name, had once been destined to inherit the group as the CEO's illegitimate daughter. After the CEO's legitimate wife delivered another daughter, the girl lost her original name. She adopted the surname and decided to live as a player from then on. Only a handful of individuals across the globe ever discovered this hidden truth. Her powerful presence filled the entire room, radiating an intense energy that seemed to touch everything around her. Stood his ground, refusing to retreat. In answer to the challenge, he revealed his own strength. He unleashed the power of dominion of the Night King, confronting her strength without hesitation. Young's eyes grew wide with shock as he realized his opponent had managed to block the attack he had just launched. Advanced cautiously, placing one foot in front of the other. With a sudden movement, he pressed her firmly against the wall, planting his hand near her cheek. He sternly warned her not to overstep her boundaries. At that moment, the cheeks turned a deep shade of red. By the following morning, large groups of people had assembled within the grand arena, signaling that the third player examination was about to commence. This time, the exam welcomed an audience, allowing anyone to observe. People gathered to watch as the entire test unfolded before their eyes. From behind the scenes, the main examiners kept a close watch on all the activities unfolding on stage. Blended into the bustling crowd, his appearance cleverly altered to avoid detection. His uncle lingered close by, anxiety etched across his face. Stories of the perils surrounding the player exams echoed in his mind, fueling his worry. His cousin responded with a calm smile, showing no worry. He seemed confident, believing that strength was enough to defeat their opponents with just a single punch. Meanwhile, reporter's anxiety continued to intensify. Previously, she had spoken with just a C rank awakened, which left her editor frustrated. Was probably already out of the competition, or so it seemed. If another chance at a genuine interview slipped away, it would mean the end for him. Without warning, the mood within the arena changed dramatically. Even those with the most experience in the game, the skilled fighter known as Li Ji-san, who held an A rank, stood among them. Everyone's attention was fixed solely on. The thought crossed their minds, wondering if the others intended to unite against him, and they silently questioned just how powerful he truly was. The loudspeaker echoed throughout the arena, instructing everyone in the stands to remain attentive and to enjoy watching the competition. With this announcement, announcement, the start of the third player exam was officially declared. Once the signal blared, all of the competitors rushed directly toward. Despite facing overwhelming odds in the initial round, he managed to overcome two S-rank challengers entirely on his own. A wave of eager competitors pushed ahead, their energy filling the space as they moved together. A dark figure moved swiftly through the fog, wasted no time, and swiftly unleashed his petrification ability. A storm of fists and feet crashed together, filling the air with the intensity of a sudden thunderstorm. In just a moment, every assailant was launched through the air. Suddenly, an emerald glow pulsed under his feet, bursting to life without warning. Countless vines suddenly erupted from the earth, coiling themselves firmly around his body. His eyebrows knitted together as shock washed over his face. He stared at the strange object, silently questioning what it could possibly be. Lee curled his lip in disdain, thinking that despite defeating two S ranks, she had still allowed herself to become vulnerable. Lee San felt confident that victory would belong to him this time. Just as he was about to finish, broke loose from the grip of the vines. With just one powerful kick, he launched Lee San through the air, sending him soaring dozens of meters from where he stood. There was no opportunity for a break, as additional competitors surged in from all directions. Quietly lifted his hand and softly invoked the words, calling upon the dominion of the Night King. A surge of red energy exploded outward, engulfing the entire arena in its intense glow. The ghostly figure of the Night King materialized in front of the assembled crowd. Every adversary stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the intense force bearing down on them. A surge of astonished gasps rippled through the audience seated in the stands. Could hardly believe what she witnessed. She quietly remarked to herself how astonishing it was that he dared to use that particular technique during a public examination. Within moments, all the other contestants had fallen. The match appeared to have reached its conclusion at last. Of all the players, just known as the S-rank Lim was left standing, offered a faint smile, suggesting that giving up now might be the wiser choice. He wondered if the other person truly wanted to experience a repeat of the events from the first round. Her face immediately grew tense. Suddenly, an enormous wall of ice shot up, trapping where he stood. Instead of focusing on others, now had to fear for his own safety. She silently promised herself that she would not allow a repeat of past mistakes. In just a few seconds, the whole arena was reduced to rubble. Ah Young took an unsteady step ahead, then crumpled to the floor. She had not managed to overcome. Despite everything, he continued to commend her, considering her the most challenging rival he had ever faced. The arena filled with the sound of an announcement declaring that the player exam had ended. It was revealed that the victor was candidate number 920. The scene shifted to the association president, who handed him extravagant rewards as a gesture of appreciation. The announcement declared that the player had achieved S-rank status, offering enthusiastic congratulations for reaching this impressive milestone. The president was caught off guard, completely surprised by the outcome, had managed to overcome all of his opponents single-handedly. After reconsidering, the situation seemed logical. After all, he had been the one who had conquered the double dungeon by himself. With a warm smile, the president inquired if might be willing to become a member of the newly formed H-Nation Players Association, expressing a belief that his abilities had the potential to greatly influence the guild's future. Stood still, unable to say a word. He gazed at the trophy resting in his hands, his mind drifting deep into contemplation. A great deal had shifted in his life. Formerly just an average man with no special abilities, he had overcome S-rank opponents and risen to the top position. The most powerful figures from the four major guilds, among them GGNSC, widely regarded as New Age Nation's top player, had all reached out with invitations. After giving it a lot of thought, decided to reject every offer. The association president could hardly believe the choice that had just been made, shock written all over his face. Eventually responded, deciding that he would be more productive acting independently instead of joining a guild or the association. The president couldn't help but laugh out loud, clearly caught off guard by the unexpected reply. He found it amusing that someone would actually believe a single person could surpass the achievements of a whole organization. His voice changed, signaling a new mood as he decided to steer the conversation away from discussing recruitment. The idea of the Asian Friendship League was brought up as a possible interest, and there was a suggestion for someone to think about becoming a member. Several days had passed when found himself exploring a new dungeon. Before long, all of the monsters had been completely eliminated. While regaining his composure, he recalled the president's words about the Asian Friendship League. The event was a tournament spanning the continent, bringing together 5 chosen members from each nation's guilds to battle against demons and monsters. Becoming a member proved to be a difficult challenge. Anyone hoping to represent the nation had to gather a huge number of contribution points, which could only be earned by defeating formidable monsters. The president put forward the idea that should be the one to stand for their nation, understood the reality of his situation. As someone who had only recently earned his rank, he realized that surpassing experienced players with years of advancement meant confronting creatures more powerful than any he had encountered so far. Over the course of an exhausting month spent raiding every dungeon within reach, found himself unchanged. He had earned neither experience nor points. With all other paths exhausted, he made up his mind to venture into the most perilous place he knew. In another part of the city, the chairman of the group unleashed his anger, shouting furiously at his bald subordinate. The man's son remained confined to a hospital bed, while the individual responsible for his condition had astonishingly risen to the rank of an S-class player. With a forceful slam of his hand, the chairman's presence intensified, radiating power throughout the room. In that overwhelming moment, his subordinate collapsed to the floor, pinned down by the sheer weight of the chairman's authority. At that moment, a maid approached and quietly informed the chairman that a representative from the notorious guild had arrived. Hearing this, the chairman's frustration grew even stronger. Ironically, he had been the one to employ that same guild to handle. Without warning, an overwhelming weight seemed to settle over the entire room. A solitary person entered the room. The chairman reminded himself to stay composed, focusing on the youngster who was his intended target. The chairman squinted suspiciously, silently demanding to know the stranger's identity. The man introduced himself in a calm voice, calling himself Shadow, the vice president of the evil guild. Emerged from the portal at that moment, a cheerful, heavy-set man caught sight of him and called out, waving energetically in his direction. The person assigned to escort him to the auction hall was Park, a skilled alchemist ranked at the level. He admired greatly and belonged to the fan club dedicated to him, counting himself amongst most enthusiastic supporters. The East Wing stood as the city's most prestigious auction hall, renowned for its elite status. The venue was known throughout the area for holding the grandest and most respected auctions anyone could find. The auction showcased items of the highest quality, each one selected for its exceptional standard. The platform also provided instant translation, making it easier for buyers from various countries to communicate. Its most impressive feature was how well it was protected. The location's coordinates could shift without warning, making it impossible for anyone without authorization to track it down. Because of that system, no incidents had taken place in this area for many years. Understood the reality of the situation. He was aware that an S-rank demon was going to strike this location today. The host stood on stage, introducing a unique treasure called the Phoenix Elixir, a powerful potion known to boost both mana and stamina by 20 points. Aimed to earn contribution points by defeating the approaching S-rank demon. He was unfamiliar with his surroundings, recalling only that prior to his regression, the East Wing had endured devastating casualties during the demon assault. He found himself questioning who had managed to bring down that creature in the past. He shifted his gaze toward the heavy-set man standing next to him, silently wondering who managed the auction house. The man seemed ready to respond. A piercing voice sliced through the silence. A figure looked over with a hint of surprise, recognizing the newcomer as the youngest S-ranked player from H Nation, and recalling that his name was recognized as the country's S-ranked player and serving as the chief of security for the whole event, stood as the featured speaker. There was an important fact that could not be ignored. This individual had a reputation for turning against his own companions whenever it benefited him. To other players, he had earned the fearsome nickname of the Demon. He gradually reached out his left hand, expressing that it was a privilege to at last encounter the talented player. Unaware of any danger, extended his hand and gave it a firm shake. In an instant, his entire body was jolted by a powerful wave of electricity. The suddenness of the man's attack caught him completely off guard. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he realized the truth. Standing before him was truly an S-rank. Prepared himself to retaliate. He suddenly noticed the group of people watching from close by. The electric shock left them helpless, twisting and turning across the floor in agony. Let go of his hand in a relaxed manner. He leaned closer, a sly grin spreading across his face, and made it clear that the hierarchy existed even among those ranked as S, implying that the listener finally grasped this truth. Uncertain about the other person's presence, the speaker decided to offer some guidance. They cautioned against making any reckless choices and suggested simply enjoying the auction instead. The man's silhouette gradually blended into the bustling crowd, becoming harder to distinguish with each passing moment. Squinted, realizing that the situation was proving to be far more complex than he had anticipated. Meanwhile, in a different part of the building, several shadowy figures moved silently as they approached the control room. The bald man took charge, guiding his team straight into the fray as they launched an aggressive attack to capture the control room. With a single action, the elderly man effortlessly defeated every opponent. The man standing before them was revealed to be an enigmatic demon of S-rank power. While remained at his post, a subordinate approached with visible anxiety, informing him of trouble at the auction hall. The S-rank player from New H Nation had arrived on the scene, causing concern among the ranks. The subordinate hesitantly asked for instructions. In response, lips curled into a chilly smile as he whispered under his breath, dismissing as insignificant. Confident in his own power, believed that as long as he was present, everyone would be exposed to the will of God, with no chance for anyone to slip away unnoticed. In the blink blink of an eye, a deafening blast shattered the silence, sending a wave of fire sweeping across the auction hall. A series of explosions erupted one after another in rapid sequence. Both structures were completely demolished, leaving nothing behind but piles of debris. Found himself speechless, caught off guard despite his prior knowledge of the impending attack. However, it never crossed anyone's mind that several attacks could happen simultaneously. They couldn't understand how anyone had managed to slip into the auction grounds. Any curiosity would have to be set aside for the moment, as handling the demons took top priority. One individual lifted their hand, motioning for the rest of the group to remain motionless. A swift figure streaked through the room, and within moments, every demon collapsed to the ground, defeated where they had been standing. Looked over at Park and instructed him to reach out to the association and request reinforcements. Meanwhile, planned to pursue the mastermind behind the scenes. On the bustling auction floor, security personnel fought desperately to defend the goods that had just been purchased. The instant Dark signaled his command, chaos erupted as both groups collided in a violent battle. In mere moments, the ground was littered with fallen combatants, stained with blood. Seizing the opportunity, Dark grabbed an item from the display table. He had finally secured the Phoenix Potion, a rare elixir known to increase both mana and stamina by 20 points permanently once consumed. He at last realized the reason behind intense desire for the object. Even just looking at it, he could sense the strong energy it held. She wondered if she would be able to drink it on her own. A thunderous explosion interrupted him before he could finish. One of his soldiers fell to the ground without warning. Before he had a chance to respond, an unseen power swiftly eliminated his followers in rapid succession. Dark was startled when he recognized the invisibility skill. Suddenly, a blade sliced down from overhead with lethal precision. A sharp force tore through the right side of his face, damaging his eye. He cried out in agony as a surge of shadowy energy erupted from him. In a flash, glowing chains made of raw mana burst from the earth and wrapped themselves securely around, holding him fast. Believing that invisibility offered protection, the opponent underestimated the threat, but it became clear they had reached the end of the line. Rather than appearing worried, broke into a satisfied grin. He realized that this ability allowed him to follow his targets, which he found impressive. In his mind, he decided that the skill was certainly valuable enough to claim for himself. Meanwhile, had taken command of the control room that operated the dimensional gate. Everything was unfolding more easily than he had anticipated. He believed that as soon as he secured the Phoenix Potion, his mission would come to an end. Suddenly, one of his subordinates approached with a hint of anxiety and informed him that Dark's team had relayed a message, though there appeared to be something off about it. Without warning, the radio emitted a burst of static as a voice addressed by name, confirming her identity. His gaze sharpened with suspicion as she silently wondered about the stranger's identity. It was none other than the man who had just stolen the item she valued most. The only way to reclaim the Phoenix Potion was to come and retrieve it personally. After delivering his challenge, lifted the potion to his lips and swallowed it all at once. Suddenly, a wave of energy flooded through him, rapidly boosting both his stamina and mana. He hadn't expected the impact to be so intense, and the strength of it caught him off guard. Now there was a sense of relief, knowing the danger of it ending up with the wrong people was gone. At that moment, and his team reached the location, confusion was clear on their faces as they glanced around, unable to spot anyone nearby even though their tracker had guided them to this exact spot. Quietly, remarked that their target was standing right before them and demanded that reveal himself. A glimmer danced through the atmosphere as materialized, a cheerful grin on his face. He had doubted anyone would truly notice his presence. His eyes narrowed with suspicion as he wondered why someone of S-rank caliber would be present in this place. Quickly responded, wondering aloud why the head of security would be present so late at night. Mentioned he was searching for something that mattered a lot to him. Upon hearing those words, quickly connected the dots. It now made sense to him why it had come loose right from the beginning. Despite the impressive assembly of elite players, none of them realized that the enemy had already slipped past their defenses. Access to this place required a unique level of authorization, making it nearly impossible for just anyone to enter. It became clear that the person before them must have been the insider secretly working within the organization. In the blink of an eye, launched himself forward, delivering a direct punch toward, lifted his sword with ease, and stopped the attack without any difficulty. The demand echoed as the soccer player shouted fiercely, insisting that the item be given to them immediately. Responded in a chilly tone, making it clear that any reward would need to be deserved. Their swords met with a fierce intensity, the sound of metal striking metal echoing as they fought in a whirlwind of aggression. Blades whipped through the air from all sides, filling the atmosphere with a vibrating surge of power. Started to notice the weight of expectations pressing down on him. Despite activating his invisibility, managed to locate his opponents solely by relying on the sounds they made and the aura of their murderous intent. During that brief moment when attention wavered, a swift and forceful blow descended from overhead. He was stunned to discover that, despite possessing the same ability, the gap in their expertise was vast. He hesitated to rely on predation for now, feeling unprepared prepared to use it. Drawing upon his inner reserves, released a powerful surge of his aura. A sudden, unseen energy exploded outward, knocking everyone in the vicinity off their feet and pinning them to the ground. Once the chaos faded, had disappeared, his voice resonated from somewhere overhead, confirming that the guess had been correct. He explained that being invisible was useless when someone could detect everything within the area. Instead of searching at ground level, the speaker believed that anyone truly determined to locate them would have directed their abilities toward the sky. Even as the last echoes of speech lingered in the air, a powerful blow suddenly descended with overwhelming force. A line ran down the middle of the hallway, dividing it into two equal sections. Self-assured smile quickly faded, replaced by a look of shock and uncertainty. Managed to stop the deadly strike by summoning chains through his magic. Broke his silence, explaining that the previous attack had not been intended to hit the opponent directly, but rather to restrict their ability to move freely. While he continued to talk, an unending number of chains coiled firmly around, delivered a powerful blow that knocked his opponent down hard onto the ground. His voice, icy and emotionless, declared that everything should come to an end now. After overpowering, he unleashed the chains further, restraining all others in the vicinity. He questions motives, bewildered that someone of S-rank status would resort to such actions. Without waiting for an answer, he struck with a powerful kick, launching him several meters through the air. He warned not to stall any longer and demanded complete information about. He informed that reinforcements from the associations were en route, and with their arrivals, fate would be sealed. Responded with a crooked grin, his expression making it clear that the other person still didn't understand. At the same time, inside the control center, a pair of high-ranking officials argued over what action to take next. The Alchemy Guild Master stormed into the room, demanding to know why reinforcements had not yet been dispatched to the East Sector. The president of the association explained that as soon as the incident began, a strike team under Park's leadership had already been sent out. After the Eastern control room fell into enemy hands, every teleportation gate became locked down. Despite the tense situation, there was no need for alarm. 2 S-rank players were present at the scene, and as long as they managed to endure until the gates could be opened again, hope remained. Just then, emerged unexpectedly in front of the group. The scene shifted back to who spoke in a measured tone as he asked if the other person was familiar with a skill known as contract with the demon. Possessed a fearsome power. Through the sacrifice of human lives, considering both how many and how valuable, they could call forth monsters of designated ranks. Sneered as he confirmed the chilling truth about a human sacrifice, making it clear that this was indeed what he had been referring to. News of the revelation reached distant association leaders, leaving them in shock and disbelief. Had captured hundreds of hostages, and if they were all killed, the consequences would be devastating. Persisted in her taunts, insisting that even though she had been beaten, remained unbeatable. She presented 2 grim options: either stand by and witness their downfall, or rush into a hopeless fight against impossible odds. Paused, deep in thought as he considered what to do next. Just then, subordinates informed her that seemed to have been defeated, though, and the Phoenix potion remained missing. Gave a sly smile, suspecting that the boy might be anticipating backup from the association. As he moved his hand through the air, shadows of energy began to spread throughout the room. A multitude of people hung motionless above the ground. Growing impatient at the enemy's absence, decided he would force the hidden figure to reveal himself. With a menacing glare, he lifted his hand, prepared to execute the captives. Suddenly, the ship was swallowed by complete darkness. When the world around him came back into focus, the hostages had vanished without a trace. In that instant, emerged silently behind and unleashed a powerful assault. Quickly shifted his body to the side, narrowly avoiding the incoming attack. Countless monsters erupted from overhead, surging downward in relentless waves toward. He was caught off guard by an attack concealed above him. The frightened hostages pleaded desperately, their voices echoing through the room as they begged to be rescued. He paid no attention to them at all. The beasts descended with the force of a tempest, breaking the earth beneath them and leaving deep craters in their wake. Within moments, swept through the group, his sword glinting sharply as it moved through the shadows. He summoned the power of the Night King, aiming to engulf the horde with its overwhelming force. Much to his astonishment, nothing happened when he tried. Let out a harsh, icy laugh, making it clear that the demons brought forth through a pact with a devil were far from normal. These creatures would obey no one, but each one strengthened by the touch of divine power. Although had been defeated, it was a grave mistake to go against the will of God. Found himself at his breaking point as countless creatures pressed in around him, their sheer numbers threatening to consume him entirely. The fight quickly became chaotic and impossible to manage. Meanwhile, the onlookers stood motionless, paralyzed by terror. Someone in the crowd whispered in disbelief, wondering if even he was powerless against those monsters. A single observant man realized what others had missed. The group's safety was due solely to stepping in. The creatures remained unaware of their presence, thanks to who was bravely battling every one of them by himself. Upon further observation, it became clear to them that all his actions before had been carefully intended to distract the creatures and keep the others safe. From the start, the man realized that intentions all along had been to rescue them. The crowd, upon understanding the situation, began to call out words of support to him. In an instant, lashed out with his chains, wrapping them securely around the monsters and restraining their movements. He gestured quietly, signaling to the group that they should remain silent. He was growing weary from battling the unending flood of monsters, and the frightened hostages heightened his struggle even more. He realized he was reaching his limit and could not continue. With a subtle gesture, he indicated to Park Woon that it was time to act. A shadowy figure moved into the light, signaling the start of what was to come. Only a short while ago, had managed to overcome both and before explaining the entire situation to Park. However, the current challenge was far greater. Monsters now filled the control room. Facing only would have made the situation bearable for him. Engaging in combat at this location would endanger the hostages, and he knew he had to prevent that at all costs. For this reason, he relied on Park for assistance. Despite the suggestion, Park disagreed and made it clear that connecting this region to the association couldn't be done. He pointed out that they lacked even the most basic information, such as its coordinates. Gave a sly smile, feeling confident about the situation. He decided that it was enough for now and simply needed the monsters to be teleported away from the area. Simultaneously with the portal's appearance, events began to unfold. In a flash, an endless horde of monsters was drawn inside. Stared in disbelief, her eyes growing wide as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. Even Park couldn't hide his surprise, realizing how effortlessly the plan was unfolding. At this point, just a single opponent was left standing, gestured, indicating that he should lead the hostages to safety and leave the area. Park paused, torn between leaving and the urge to offer assistance, refused with a determined shake of his head. He knew that the opponent was an S rank, and realized he wouldn't be able to both defend himself and keep the other person safe at once. Park, wearing a somber expression, assembled the remaining survivors and led them away. Their silhouettes slipped out of sight along the hallway, while paused for a moment, inhaling deeply. As the last confrontation drew near, anticipation filled the air. Under the pressure of unyielding attack, moved swiftly to evade each strike while his eyes scanned for a chance to counter. Moved swiftly, bridging the gap between them in an instant. With a swift motion, he unleashed a giant wave of fire that surged in his direction. Lifted his sword, positioning it defensively to intercept the attack. A deafening blast reverberated throughout the room, regardless of the number of demons defeated or the countless lives protected. Curled her lips into a sneer, certain of her own superiority. She believed her opponent's efforts were pointless, and declared that no matter what they tried, they would never be able to overcome her. He lifted his claw, prepared to end life then and there. Despite facing imminent danger, his face showed no fear. In his mind, he was certain that his fate would be sealed in this very moment. At that moment, he triggered the power of predation. A powerful wave of red energy burst forth, taking the shape of a gigantic dragon that swept through the area, consuming all the monsters nearby. Stood motionless, shock washing over him. The revelation of such concealed strength had completely caught him off guard. Suddenly, he erupted with wild laughter, his mood shifting in an instant. He declared that his decision had changed. Now he saw as the ideal sacrifice for the gods. All around, her followers sank to their knees in reverence. They acted as though a holy being had appeared before them, filling the space with reverence. Before his eyes, the shape standing in front of him gradually vanished until there was nothing left. Could hardly believe what had happened as he realized that they had been sacrificed. A massive dragon with a green, skeletal form appeared behind Rue, revealing itself as the S-rank monster known as. At the same time, the escaping survivors found themselves face to face with followers. Right when they get ready to defend themselves, blood spurted from the enemy's mouths as they struggled to breathe. The figure disappeared without a trace. Just then, the whole structure shook violently when the dragon's enormous tail sent flying outside. Erupted into wild laughter, overwhelmed by excitement. In her mind, no creature surpassed the dragon in strength. Launched a chain that crashed through the glass wall beside him. The group was allowed to re-enter the building. The character stared in shock, struggling to identify the strange creature before them, a skeleton. A dragon let out a thunderous roar and surged ahead, its powerful form charging into action. Barely had a moment to respond before the creature's powerful tail struck him, launching him through the air once more. Declared with a triumphant voice that defeat was certain. Lifted his right hand into the air, prepared to set their instincts loose. They stood on the verge of becoming predators. A sudden stream of dragon's fiery breath cut him off before he could finish his spell. A thunderous explosion ripped apart the building, filling the air with an ear-splitting noise. Smile wavered briefly as a hint of astonishment appeared on his face. Not even could have predicted what happened next. Managed to make it through the assault alive. The speaker realized they had not fully recognized the other person's abilities. Activated his predatory ability just in time to dodge the explosion. His expression shifting to shock as he realized realized his opponent possessed S-rank power as well. He soon understood that using such immense power was likely causing severe damage to his body. Observed his opponent closely, sensing that he was almost at his breaking point. Confident that victory was within reach if he could just buy a little more time, resolved to keep delaying. However, had already discerned his true intentions. The character recognized the attempt to delay and acknowledged it as a clever tactic, but remained confident, certain that such a strategy would not succeed against them. In the blink of an eye, ordered the skeletal dragon to swoop down directly at Park Jae-woon stood among the rest of the group. A deafening blast tore up from beneath, flattening the whole building in an instant. At the same time, following their persistent hard work, the guild succeeded in unlocking the portal leading to East Point once more. With Park Sung-jin at the forefront, the reinforcements marched confidently through the gate. At that instant, the dragon sprang forward, targeting the people as they desperately tried to escape. Without a moment's pause, leaped forward to shield them. Despite his relentless efforts, the difference in strength between them was overwhelming. He struggled just to keep his position, barely managing to fend off his opponent's attacks. Park urged the others not to be concerned for their safety, insisting that everything would end if their companion were to perish. Nodded in silent agreement, called forth the skeletal dragon, fully aware that a direct confrontation offered no chance of victory. He realized that his best chance lay in stalling for as long as he could. Despite the overwhelming odds, he simply couldn't abandon hope. Determined, he searched for a solution that would allow him to protect everyone. Suddenly, a resonant voice resonated within his thoughts, declaring that restraint was no longer possible. Stood still, uncertain about the source of the mysterious voice. A sudden message appeared in front of his eyes, announcing that predation had briefly intensified and now reached rank SSS. The intense pressure surged within him, making it feel as though his body might be torn to pieces. Stared, unable to believe what she was seeing. The skill continued to climb higher until it finally reached the triple S rank. A dazzling wave of energy swept through the whole space, illuminating everything in its path. Predation spiraled out of control, leaving the speaker frustrated and bewildered as they wondered what sort of power the king had bestowed upon them. Skin started to split as the immense pressure became too much for his body to withstand. The thought crossed their mind, a surge of fear wondering if this place would become their final resting spot. He dropped to his knees as his breaths grew weaker and more uneven, remained motionless, gripped by terror, as she realized the immense power before her surpassed anything humans could achieve. Not even the person who held it was able to endure its power. He wondered why the other person hadn't deactivated the ability yet, and questioned if the delay was a tactic to stall for more time. He moved nearer, carefully sensing for any danger in the atmosphere. As soon as he acted, the red aura swiftly consumed the dragon's wing. Terror filled his eyes as they grew wide with fear. Gradually stood up, pushing himself upright with measured caution. A massive silhouette began to emerge behind him, revealing a legendary creature that anyone had ever witnessed. The character stared at the object in confusion, trying to figure out what it could possibly be. A powerful force seemed to emanate from, filling the air with intense pressure. Glared fiercely, insisting that the person before her was not. Demanding answers, she questioned the stranger's identity and the source of their unexpected power. Slowly raised his hand, his tone carrying a chilling edge. The speaker dismissed the other person's worries, explaining that it didn't matter since they had already died. In the blink of an eye, a consuming force devoured everything that lay ahead of him. Gained a new ability known as Contract with the Demon. Following his victory over, he unexpectedly slipped into a dreamlike state. Within the dream, chains erupted from the shadows, wrapping tightly around his body. Massive rocks plummeted from the sky, smashing into the earth surrounding him. Suddenly, two gigantic hands materialized as if from thin air. Suddenly, the Night King's aura sprang to life without any conscious effort. He stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend why the very ability he possessed had suddenly turned against him. Predation's voice dripped with sarcasm as it questioned whether the powers truly belonged to its opponent. Refusing to entertain any foolishness, the speaker accused the other person of consuming everything and insisted that it was now time for them to return what they had taken. The whole dream started to shake with intense force. Suddenly awoke, struggling to catch his breath. He gazed down at his right hand, once destroyed by a predator, and saw that it had been fully restored. Just then, Park Sung-jin stepped into the room with a tray of food in his hands. The tabletop overflowed with hot, freshly prepared food, each dish sending up curling wisps of steam. He clarified that the building served as a convalescent home, organized by the association and the Alchemists' Guild as a gesture of thanks for putting an end to the demons. With stepping in at the crucial moment, was apprehended, and many lives were spared as a result. Park remained behind to watch over him himself. His expression remained puzzled. His mind replayed the moment he had fallen during his battle against, but nothing after that came to him. His memory was empty beyond that point. Park looked at the other person, realizing they were both struggling to recall what had happened. A memory from the past surfaced, showing Park witnessing completely destroyed by just one powerful punch. The figure who stood before them was not. The stranger lifted his hand, an icy, oppressive presence radiating from him. His heart seemed to give out as he suddenly collapsed onto the ground. When the mysterious figure attempted to shift once more, his form gradually started to dissolve into nothingness. Reaching the edge of his abilities, he realized it was time to retreat, deciding to come back another day. In a sudden moment, fell lifelessly to the earth. By the time Park reached the scene, he found only devastation where buildings once stood. The true events that had taken place remained a mystery to everyone. Later, the investigators spoke with those who had made it through the ordeal, but each survivor recalled just a single detail, had emerged victorious over. No one seemed able to remember the details. It felt as though their minds had been completely erased. They wondered if demons might be causing trouble but for now, they concentrated on getting better. They promised to share any new information if something else came up. Realized the demons were not to blame. Instead, had been utterly consumed by a powerful hunger. He accessed his skill menu and suddenly stopped, shocked to see the words, "Open the Gate of Abyss," displayed before him. The character doubted the possibility, recalling that the ability once functioned as a summoning skill requiring 200 mana, while possessing only 180 mana at the moment. Just then, Park motioned in the direction of the doorway, signaling that a visitor had arrived. A moment later, Amy Young entered the room at a measured pace. Instead of a warm greeting, the atmosphere carried the weight of a confrontation. She announced her purpose with a calm, detached tone, making it clear she was there to see how things were going. Despite having rescued several people and defeated a handful of S-rank opponents, the speaker warned against becoming overconfident, promising that it wouldn't be long before they closed the gap and caught up. Remained clueless about the real reason behind her visit. Initially, she may have sincerely been curious about his well-being. It had become obvious that he had completely regained his strength. The energy surrounding him now radiated with an intensity that surpassed anything he had revealed during the test. She felt a wave of unease as she realized he had become even more powerful than before. A quiet noise from beyond the room drew their focus. Louis Young entered the room silently, moving on tiptoe as he glanced around cautiously. Young felt confused as she tried to understand the reason behind her sister's unexpected presence in this room, appeared visibly dissatisfied, and inwardly wished that the other person would refrain from referring to her as sister. The association had supplied the access code, making that clear for anyone who wondered. The situation involved two S-rank players being assigned to the same room, which strongly suggested an important underlying reason. In a matter of seconds, a deep blush spread across Emmy Young's face, interrupted abruptly, demanding an explanation for the visitor's presence. Lee Young's voice grew gentler as he explained that his visit was both to see how things were going and to deliver a gift. During her conversation with the association president, she discovered that aimed to join the Asia Friendship League. Despite accomplishing an impressive victory at East Corner, the individual's rank remained just 30th. Only those who placed in the top 5 were eligible to advance. Because of this, another person arrived and presented them with a special pass, the clearance permit for the dual dungeon known as the Fire Temple. At the same time, events were unfolding at East Corner. A band of mysterious individuals in cloaks made their entrance, with Shadow, the Evil Guild's vice president, taking the lead. The group looked everywhere for, but came up empty-handed. When a subordinate inquired about whether they should report the situation, Shadow responded with composure, explaining that it was unnecessary since had merely been a pawn for hire, and their main objective had already been achieved. Just then, a huge cargo vessel emerged in the distance, its outline rising above the horizon. The captain raised his voice, making it clear that only authorized investigators were allowed in the restricted area. Before he managed to complete his sentence, they disappeared without a trace. Within moments, the whole vessel slipped quietly beneath the icy surface, disappearing into the cold, dark waters below. Shadow possessed the ability to erase space itself. A sly smile spread across his face as he quietly remarked to himself that it was proving to be increasingly intriguing. The setting changed, and the audience brimmed with anticipation, their energy filling the air. The renowned S-rank player, known as the hero of East Corner, had made a personal appearance. Although he had gained permission to explore the dungeon, the guild would still have the final say over how the treasures were shared and who would be chosen for the team. Did not protest, fully aware that he stood within the sacred grounds of the Fire Temple. The Fire Temple took its name from the everlasting flames that blazed at its doorway. It held the distinction of being the nation's second discovered dual dungeon. Prior to its comeback, the Nightwalker Guild had attempted to conquer it, but their efforts had resulted in significant losses. Realized he had to join in, since both his score and his earnings depended on it. Although his right hand remained injured from the attack, he found himself both weaker and slower than before. Attempting to face challenges alone was now out of the question. The situation would change completely if he entered alongside another S-rank, Young. When the two S-ranks joined forces, their combined strength made them nearly unstoppable. The display changed once more, revealing a crowd of more than 300 players advancing toward the entrance of the dungeon. Despite their numbers, just 2 individuals received permission to go inside. His eyes widened in surprise as he realized it would be only the 2 of them. Lee regarded the moment as a special outing, treating it as if it were their own private date. Upon entering the Fire Temple, a dual dungeon, the environment around them began to distort and shift. Louis Young's eyes opened a bit wider, surprise flickering across his face. The environment in this place was completely unlike that of an ordinary dungeon. She quietly wondered if every dual dungeon was similar to this one. Responded that, based on his experience with the Apocalypse dungeon he had previously completed, it had felt similar. He continued to ponder his options, uncertain about which direction to choose. From the shadows, a tentacle suddenly emerged and yanked him directly into an opening. Responded without hesitation, preparing himself to retaliate. Suddenly he stopped moving, paralyzed by surprise. Louis Young had defeated a monstrous opponent with just one powerful strike. He looked on in shock, unable to believe what he saw as she erased it with ease. He pressed on relentlessly, launching himself forward once more without hesitation. A sudden burst of light pierced the shadows, instantly wiping out scores of first-tier monsters. Young's display during the previous encounter had not revealed the full extent of her abilities. This explained why the current mission required just 2 participants. Tightened his hand into a fist, realizing he needed to challenge himself more than ever before. In just a few minutes, the pair eliminated all the monsters and descended to the deepest level. Despite their overwhelming numbers and impressive strength, not a single creature managed to endure the powerful attacks delivered by Yi Young. Found himself questioning what challenges her team had encountered prior to his comeback that resulted in such a crushing defeat. At that moment, extended his hand and offered a ring to him. The artifact bore the name the Ring of the Warrior. The item increased the user's physical abilities, compensating for the strength had lost due to his hurt right hand. A smile appeared on her face as she considered that joining the guild would give access to equipment even more impressive than this. Hesitated, remaining silent for a moment before responding. He issued a caution for everyone to keep their guard up, pointing out that they had already reached the area where the boss awaited. Louis Young surveyed his surroundings and directed attention forward, indicating a huge circular structure ahead. They realized with surprise that the egg was actually the boss. Gave a silent nod while the strange egg pulsed with a powerful wave of mana. He was just reaching out to examine it when its name appeared. Without warning, the figure sprang ahead. With all their strength, they delivered a powerful blow to the egg. Stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend her daring actions. He wondered silently what could have driven her to act with such abandon. As the haze and debris faded away, visibility gradually returned. Fragments of the enormous egg were scattered across the earth, its shell completely broken. Young gazed at the creature known as the Dual Dungeon Boss, a smirk forming on her lips as she silently judged its weakness. A sudden, brilliant blue light exploded upward from beneath, filling the space with an intense glow. At the same moment, a powerful, resonant voice thundered through the air, expressing surprise and amusement that humans would dare intrude upon its sacred domain. As the brightness diminished, an enormous figure wreathed in flames emerged from the depths below. The S-rank monster known as the Phoenix appeared before them, leaving both individuals motionless with disbelief. Humans had always believed the Phoenix to be just another mortal being, but in reality, this legendary creature held extraordinary powers of regeneration and a unique immunity to magic. Nobody, not even, had anticipated that the dungeon's boss would reveal itself as a phoenix wreathed in blue flames. The phoenix let out a sharp screech and launched itself toward them, immediately sensed that the force held a surge of hypnotic influence. He made an attempt to alert Yi Young. Her gaze lost its brightness, and without warning, she pointed her sword toward him. Young, once known as an S-rank, now found herself completely under the phoenix's control, found himself under a barrage of attacks, leaving him with no choice but to evade each one. He released the force of King's Hockey, sending her collapsing to the floor. Frustration welled up inside him as he urged himself to regain composure, his voice rising in a desperate attempt to break free from his troubled thoughts. Yi Yang had already drawn in her magical energy. A powerful wave of energy shot ahead, ripping the earth open in its path. The phoenix floated high in the air, its laughter carrying a sinister edge. In its mind, it mused about how delicate humans were and how effortlessly their minds could be manipulated. At that instant, a brief sign of realization appeared on his face. Without warning, a chain wrapped itself tightly around her left leg. At that moment, additional strands coiled tightly around her, holding her firmly so she couldn't move. The magical chains held a paralyzing power, leaving her completely unable to move. Quietly realized that the person before him had destroyed the Nightwalker Guild in the past. As he prepared for what came next, He warned the other to brace themselves, knowing it would be painful. He lifted his fist, solid and unyielding like rock, then brought it crashing down with every ounce of power he possessed. Yi Young fell to the ground, her body giving out beneath her. When she regained consciousness, the hold of the phoenix over her would be gone. Looked at them with icy eyes, making it clear that it was now their turn. As soon as he began to speak, everyone on both sides immediately fell silent, their attention fixed on his words. They released the entirety of their magical energy. Not long afterward, raced through the blazing tunnels, Yi Young slung motionless across his shoulders. Confronting a monster of S-rank strength by oneself was almost unthinkable. As the relentless blows from the phoenix poured down upon him, he searched desperately for a chance to launch a counterattack. With a quick, fluid movement, he positioned himself out of sight behind the object. He put all his might into the swing. The phoenix moved with ease, its fiery wings sweeping through the air as it avoided the attack. Despite his efforts to secure it with chains, the blue fire devoured them in a flash. Clenched his jaw, realizing that the creature was proving to be far more resilient than he had anticipated. He faltered briefly, and in that moment the phoenix unleashed a fresh surge of blue flames. He quickly shifted his body just in time, feeling a wave of intense heat brush against his face. He whispered in disbelief, realizing that this was no ordinary phoenix. A thought crossed his mind. Was this the legendary ultimate phoenix? The beast stood apart from all others, its strength eclipsing even the mightiest S-rank monsters. People had designated the creature as an S+ tier monster, a title reserved for beings of immense destructive power. If that was the case, his present abilities would be nowhere near enough to destroy the object's core that kept healing itself. He considered using predation, yet feared that this ability could once more slip beyond his control. Paused, uncertainty flickering across his face. Yi Young's eyes snapped open in an instant. Yi Yang stood frozen, unable to believe the sight unfolding in front of her. Summarized what was happening, using only a handful of concise statements. Before she had a chance to reply, the phoenix rushed at them with fierce determination. The creature let out a thunderous roar, demanding to know if it was truly being ignored. In the next instant, its face transformed, revealing a look of astonishment. The pair responded to the creature's strike with flawless coordination, their actions synchronized as if they shared a single mind. Cautioned him not to lose control again. She assured him in a steady voice that he could relax, promising she would not do it. The phoenix unleashed an enraged cry, its magical energy blazing brightly as it swooped downward once more. Summoned the power known as the heart of the monarch. Suddenly, the abilities of both individuals increased dramatically. Young lifted her spear, allowing raw energy to surge through it. In a single, powerful blow, the phoenix's form was ripped to pieces. She assured them that from this point onward, she would handle everything herself. SG Amazon activated her berserk mode. Letting out a fierce cry, she launched her spear as hard as she could. The explosion tore the phoenix apart, scattering its fiery pieces in every direction. She unleashed a rapid series of strikes, her movements merging into a dazzling display of brightness and flame. With one last powerful blow, she brought her weapon down, forcefully driving the creature into the searing, molten earth. A powerful blast rumbled through the whole temple, making the walls tremble. Her breath came in ragged bursts, every ounce of energy already spent. Her legs buckled beneath her, sending her crashing down onto the floor. Once more, the phoenix's remarkable ability to heal itself began to take effect. In a matter of moments, 50% of its form had regenerated. The creature unfurled its wings, preparing to launch an attack. Suddenly, numerous chains erupted from below, wrapping securely around the creature and holding it in place. Quietly insisted to himself that this would not be the moment he tried to stand back up. He took a deep breath to regain his balance and activated his predatory power, determined to finish the confrontation once and for all. At the entrance of the dungeon, a group of anxious faces gathered, their silence heavy with worry. Emerged from the shimmering rift, cradling the motionless form of Yi Yang in his arms. Broke the silence, announcing that the Fire Temple's dual dungeon had been completed without any issues. Within minutes, word of the event had reached people all throughout the country. Louis Young's face reddened as he watched the broadcast, unable to believe what he was seeing. He wondered how such a highly confidential matter had been exposed to the public. She discovered that a mistake by one of her team members had unintentionally caused the report to be leaked. Afterward, she took care to ensure they received appropriate discipline. Just then, the guild master came by to see her. They sat side by side outside the hospital as the golden light of evening washed over them, sharing a quiet conversation. The master wondered about his abilities, wanting to know just how powerful he had been inside that dungeon. Offered a slight smile, admitting that he had no memory of the incident because he had lost consciousness by that point. No one doubted that he had faced the phoenix by himself and emerged victorious. Now he had vanished into the depths of the abyss. The master ventured into the abyss himself and used his power to freeze it. Louis' brows knitted together as confusion clouded his expression. After reaching the summit, many individuals choose not to continue their ascent. Despite everything, he continued to drive himself harder, leaving others to wonder about the reason behind his relentless determination. The master hesitated for a moment before softly suggesting that it might be for the good of the country. In a world filled with terrifying creatures, he feels a strong desire to shield shield people from harm. This deep motivation drives him to pursue greater strength. Young averted his gaze, silently admitting to himself that there was more to it than just that. The scene shifted abruptly to a vast, empty void. Bodies littered the earth, while the stench of decay and blood hung heavily in the air. Seated atop a throne crafted from bones was the ruler of the abyss, a vampire king whose power remained a mystery. He extended his hand, granting a surge of energy to the man who knelt before him. The king wanted to know what it was like to experience the influence held by their family. The man's lips curled into a sly smile as a surge of power rushed through his body. He marveled at the overwhelming strength now flowing within him, fully aware that he was the most accomplished hunter in the Z Nation. As the scene changed, moved forward and descended into the darkness. He hadn't been back to this place until now, marking his first visit since coming home. A man dressed in a black uniform approached and welcomed him, introducing himself as Beck, a G-rank player from the World Player Association in Zone 22. He motioned ahead, inviting the others to approach, and promised to reveal the true nature of the abyss. Since it was their first visit, advised that hiring a guide or at least a small group of mercenaries would be wise. The World Player Association established multiple base camps across the abyss, aiming to support exploration efforts. However, that should not be confused with true security, as creatures continued to launch assaults even within the boundaries of the camps. For the sake of everyone's safety, recommended that gather a few more teammates. However, had never planned to go through with that idea. In the next instant, an enormous centipede sprang forward, heading directly for the group. With one swift motion, brought his weapon down and defeated the creature in an instant. He explained in a relaxed tone that he was simply out for a walk. Not long after, he reached a lonely, crumbling structure hidden far in the depths of the abyss. He reached into his chest pocket and retrieved the enchanted stone he had been keeping there. After conquering the Fire Temple's dual dungeon, he finally saw his mana rise to 200. This new development allowed him to initiate a pact with the demon. Something felt wrong. The description of the skill had been altered, now stating that it was limited to a single use. He wondered if predation was the cause, and realized he would discover the answer before long. He closed his fingers tightly around the magic stone, shattering it in his grasp. In a flash, the agreement with the demon sprang to life. Before him towered an enormous gate, constructed entirely from bones. They wondered what might be hidden on the other side of the door, and prepared to find out. He moved ahead, passing through the entrance to the abyss. As he stepped through the doorway, a sudden shock stopped him in his tracks, his face going rigid with surprise. A massive, shadowy fortress stood in the distance, its presence quiet yet foreboding. He hardly managed to move forward before. Suddenly, three indistinct shapes emerged in the darkness behind him. Reacted at once, pulling out his weapon without hesitation. The individual realized that these were the very threats the system had cautioned them to watch out for. The beings before them were succubi, legendary creatures from the underworld known for devouring souls. They consumed the energy of humans, conjured deceptive visions, and manipulated the thoughts of others. The typical succubus weighed as much as a B-rank monster, which made the narrator question if these were truly the creatures they were meant to form a contract with. Given the situation, the only option left was for the character to overcome their opponents. He lunged ahead with determination, yet the succubi slipped away from his attack with ease. In the blink of an eye, they unleashed a spell of illusion. Stopped suddenly, his sight overwhelmed by a thick, unending mist that blurred everything around him. The succubi smiled with satisfaction, pleased that their illusion had successfully ensnared its target. Without warning, launched a swift counterattack. He released the full strength of King's aura. A powerful shockwave ripped through the hull, hurling the demons backward through the air. The illusion had failed to affect him in any way. With an enigmatic and formidable strength, he had completely withstood its influence. The time had come to initiate the contract. A pact with a demon could only be formed if one of two specific requirements was fulfilled. One could either provide the demon with what it craved, or force it into submission using overwhelming strength. Decided to take the second route. Before he had a chance to start, a system notification appeared, stating that the target could not be contracted. Caught off guard by the sudden announcement, he stood motionless in surprise. Suddenly, a multitude of succubi appeared, stepping out from the shadows that encircled him. A system alert flashed, announcing the presence of an ultimate succubus with an S+ rank. The succubus curled her lips into a sly smile as she spotted a human, already imagining how this new captive would serve as an impressive offering for her queen. Within the castle's depths, a maid bowed low before her queen, nervously informing her that a human had found their way into the palace. A human had appeared, and the queen's alluring voice resonated through the air, finding the situation quite entertaining. At that exact time, entered the magnificent castle. Succubi poured in from all directions, filling each hallway as they converged on him. He was surprised by just how difficult they turned out to be. Two individuals stepped forward, positioning themselves to prevent him from moving moving any further, assaulting the target from either direction. He shifted his weight backward just in time to avoid the sharp swipe of their claws. He unleashed the power of the king's aura once more. The explosion hurled both demons through the air. The object soared through the air, covering a distance of more than 100 meters. He let out a long breath as he managed to steady himself. He considered the possibilities and realized that if none of those individuals matched the contract's requirements, the only remaining option had to be the one known as the Queen. Just then, a companion with a serene expression entered the room, announcing that the Queen was expecting their presence. Trailed behind her as she entered the throne chamber, a majestic woman, enveloped in a deep red shadow, took her place on the dais. With a velvety voice, she greeted those before her, introducing herself as the matriarch of every succubus. A notification from the system suddenly materialized. The system confirmed the target of the demonic contract, prompting to narrow his eyes in recognition. His suspicions were confirmed. It truly was her. Stood motionless, startled to hear the succubus queen addressing him in a language he understood. The creature expressed astonishment at the human's ability to comprehend its language. It wondered aloud what had drawn the visitor to this place, questioning whether the motivations were power, riches, or recognition. He answered in a composed manner, explaining that he was not there for any of those reasons, but instead had come to propose a contract to the ruler. Let out a quiet chuckle that quickly grew into a fit of laughter. The creature regarded the human with a sharp gaze, noting their audacity and silently warning that such risky humor could have deadly consequences. The abyssal duke and queen of the succubi possessed in-level power. Without warning, a multitude of tendrils surged toward him, striking out from every direction, summoned the force of the king's aura, directly confronting her strength with his own. Their combined forces crashed together, sending a booming shockwave echoing throughout the hall. Relying on sheer power, the character intended to force their opponent into submission. Calmly raised his short blade, effortlessly stopping her attack without showing any sign of concern. He sprang upward, soaring above the ground. He directed a petrify spell in her direction. However, within moments, all of his abilities suddenly ceased to function. Quickly brought her fingers together in a sharp snap. The environment surrounding the group began to bend and contort in unnatural ways. Upon glancing around once more, found himself positioned in the heart of a bustling, contemporary city. Before he had a chance to respond, the earth beneath him disappeared, sending him tumbling straight into the ocean. At that moment, he understood the truth. He had become ensnared within the queen's illusion. He quietly questioned to himself, astonished as he wondered when she had managed to use the spell. From the very start, her voice surrounded him, its echoes filling the space. Frustration simmered quietly as he muttered a curse beneath his breath. At that instant, he realized he had become trapped within the illusion. The scenery changed once more, transporting him into a scene from his early years. In the past, he often expressed his desire to become an awakened, hoping it would allow his parents to enjoy a more comfortable life. Despite everything, his parents' deepest hope had always been simply for him to grow up in safety and good health. He found himself reliving the memories of the war. A sudden burst of light illuminated the area, and once again, the image of the tragic car crash unfolded before his eyes. Echoes of a different memory began to surface, recalling a time he wished he could erase. Those days when, lacking any awakened talent, he became the target of relentless bullying. He was reduced to carrying supplies for teams led by others, no longer holding any real role of his own. He understood that he was powerless to assist anyone, and those who tried to support him only faced hardship themselves. Because of this, he decided to walk away from his aunt and uncle. His mother had, in the past, expressed her hope that he would find happiness. In order to find true happiness, he realized that he first had to become strong. At that instant, the system recognized Queen's hypnotic influence and tried to fight back, but its efforts were unsuccessful. Suddenly, every one of his abilities became unusable, and his overall stats plummeted dramatically. Everyone but a single one had managed to avoid being hunted, wasted no time, and quickly set the device in motion. Across the way, observed intently, her curiosity piqued by the sight of the man who remained upright, undeterred by the strange world she called home. Before long, an uneasy sensation began to settle in. The standing in front of her appeared more mature than she remembered. His memories appeared to divide, unfolding across two separate timelines. The character regarded the situation with curiosity, wondering what kind of seeker was being concealed. At the very moment she attempted to look further, a mysterious silhouette emerged in front of her. Her eyes grew wide as she looked at the king. A surge of predatory force burst forth, engulfing every trace of her crafted illusion. The illusion faded away, and the harsh truth of the real world took its place. Positioned himself behind her, his tone icy as he silently criticized the queen's tendency to invade a man's private thoughts. He declared firmly, making it clear for the final time that needed to agree to the contract. She offered a slight smile, acknowledging his escape with a hint of admiration. She found it impressive that he had managed to break free, yet she remained certain that he would not be able to end her life. She extended her tendrils, curling them gently around him, signaling her agreement with a silent acceptance. She pressed her teeth softly against his shoulder. The system recognized that all requirements had been satisfied, finalizing the summoning contract and forging a demonic pact. With these steps completed, a new title was bestowed, Queen's Man. The system that the skill level had advanced, unlocking a new ability called Perfect Hypnosis, and the charisma stat was now higher. Leaned in close and gently urged the man, selected by the king, to get some rest. Once the agreement was finalized, darkness swept over sight. As he opened his eyes, he found himself once again within the boundaries of the player zone. The character wondered if had been the one responsible for sending them back. He gazed at his newly updated list of skills, unable to believe what he was seeing. He believed that if he managed to call upon her power during the Friendship League, not even the top players from across the country would be able to defeat him. The reason behind that individual's sudden change of heart remained a mystery. The words lingered in his thoughts, a constant reminder that he was the one selected by the king. The thought crossed their mind, wondering if she might be acquainted with the king as well. At that moment, Beck turned toward him and suggested that he should consider hiring a guide. Shook his head, standing firm in his decision. With everything finished, he knew it was time to return home. The setting changed as Ryu completed the process of leaving the hospital. A small crowd gradually moved toward her, offering their congratulations on her recovery as president. Known as both a mage and a player representing the Nightwalkers Guild, was the one who spoke. He arrived with a pair of important updates. Player had successfully emerged from the deepest parts of the abyss. Ryu felt a flicker of surprise, knowing the reputation of that area as a notorious graveyard for S-class players. It seemed impossible to believe that would attempt to venture there by himself. His comeback wasn't the real problem. The real problem lay with the individual who chose to go and see him, who led when one of the top 4 guilds stood before them. The scene shifted and unexpectedly stood in front of, challenging him to a fight. He began to make his way toward, his pace unhurried and deliberate. Who led one of the most powerful guilds, had earned a reputation as the top tank. There was a time when he single-handedly battled a horde of monsters for 10 hours without rest and emerged victorious. His reputation became even more notorious when he began compelling others to become part of his guild by challenging them to duels. Just then, Secretary hurried forward to intervene before he could continue. The speaker asked the other person to lower their intensity, warning that if their behavior continued, they risked being completely banished from the abyss. She shifted her attention to preparing to clarify their purpose. The real reason for their visit was to extend an invitation for him to become a member of their guild. There would be no reason to fight if they chose to accept the invitation to join. The character realized that refusing would mean being forced into a confrontation. The character agreed and thought to themselves that, in truth, becoming a part of the group offered a pretty good opportunity. She was aware that had already started getting ready for the upcoming Friendship League. Among the 4 greats, their guild had ventured furthest into the abyss, gaining access to abundant dungeon resources and benefiting from exceptional research backing. The mention of joining the group sparked the realization that his remaining contribution points would be easily fulfilled. Upon hearing this suggestion, grew quiet, lost in contemplation. Before Secretary could continue speaking, raised his hand, signaling her to pause. It was clear that if recruiting him had been simple, he would have aligned himself with another group long before now. Lifted his gaze, and quietly admitted that he had reconsidered his decision. They agreed to proceed according to the other person's plan. The victor would claim their desired prize. The scene shifted to reveal a gigantic arena, its seats already filled with an excited crowd cheering loudly. Excitement filled the air as the crowd waited in anticipation to see face-off against. At that moment, noticed someone he recognized in the crowd. The person standing there turned out to be Reporter. Caught hold of her arm, a playful grin spreading across his face as he greeted Reporter after their long separation. They had first crossed paths at the player examination. Her cheeks flushed as she gave a swift nod, signaling that she definitely remembered. Flashed a confident grin as she faced the gathered people. She let everyone know that any remaining questions would be addressed by someone else, since she had a duel she needed to get to. Without another word, he spun on his heel and strode off into the distance. In the next instant, made his way onto the stage, entering the arena. Quietly admitted to himself that he had expected the other person to back down. Responded with unwavering confidence, signaling that the conversation was over and challenging his opponent to a fight. Both of their auras burned brightly, signaling the imminent clash between 2 powerful forces. Standing on the sidelines, explained that the match would continue until one team was entirely overpowered, emphasizing the straightforward nature of the rules. She was interrupted before she had the chance to finish. The 2 men released the entirety of their mana, letting its full force surge around them. Made the initial move, unleashing the King of Knights aura before rushing directly toward his opponent. The ability had become so strong that it could subdue even the most elite S-class players, yet remained almost unaffected. He couldn't help but let a sly smile cross his face, quietly impressed. In a blink, he disappeared, only to materialize behind, moving with the swift precision of a stalking leopard. With every ounce of strength he had, he brought his his arm around in a powerful swing. The collision echoed through the arena, its force as fierce as a tiger leaping on its prey, sending powerful shockwaves that tore across the space. His body was hurled several dozen meters through the air by the force of the blast. If he hadn't activated his petrification ability in time, the impact could have spelled his end. Struck again before his opponent had a chance to regain his footing. A rush of mana gathered, shaping itself into two luminous bull horns that appeared on his forehead. He shouted a command to initiate a pull charge and sprinted ahead with determination. Just as the moment arrived, someone guided them onto dodge sideways right on schedule. Suddenly, a gigantic ghostly elephant materialized in the space behind. With a force that rattled the ground, the creature brought its foot down, causing the earth to tremble beneath its weight. When the dust finally cleared, remained upright, unwavering before his opponent. Observing him with a sly grin, acknowledged skill at dodging attacks. Still, wondered how intended to claim victory in their ongoing battle. Grint was the one in focus now. Without another creature concealed as a surprise, the situation would not unfold as expected. His eyes blazed with determination as he urged everyone to pay close attention, confident that he would end the confrontation with a single decisive action. In a flash, the whole arena burst into excitement. The crowd recognized the signs. They understood what would happen next. Was about to reveal his ultimate transformation. The audience whispered among themselves, doubting that someone as promising as could ever hope to challenge the guild master directly. Also leaned in, her attention fully captured by the scene unfolding on stage, her gaze unwavering with interest. Visibly anxious, cautioned that if were to lose, he would have no choice but to join the guild, making it clear that they needed to prevent the match from happening. Possessed a unique talent called Beast's Blessing, which let him copy the abilities of any animal. This skill turned him into a fearsome force during hand-to-hand fights. Facing, stood little chance of winning. Young responded with a calm smile, her confidence unwavering as she reassured everyone that always kept some of his strength hidden during every battle. In the following instant, rushed ahead with all his might, remained steady, showing no sign of fear as he faced the assault with unwavering calm and sharp concentration. Their strikes collided with force. A wave of shocked breaths swept through the arena. Without warning, collapsed onto his knees. He appeared utterly baffled by the situation, pulled himself upright, a confident expression on his face, and announced with calm certainty that victory belonged to him. The audience stood motionless. Everyone stared in disbelief at the astonishing sight before them. The renowned for conquering more than 100 dungeons was now on his knees. Onlookers exchanged hushed words among themselves, questioning whether might have resorted to unfair means. Cast a sideways look at the man, realizing he was witnessing the strength of the most powerful tank. It became clear to him that defeating this opponent in a straightforward fight would have been impossible. Without the quick use of his hypnosis ability at the very last moment, he knew defeat would have been certain. His expression contorted as anger him. He tightened his fists in frustration, silently cursing himself for lowering his defenses. He spoke louder, causing the room to fall completely silent. Although she couldn't say what his exact actions were, she had to concede defeat. The guild leader made it clear that anyone belonging to their group would need to accept and honor the outcome. From the stands, a young observer watched with a hint of amusement, noting how the other person's anger revealed just how much their pride had been wounded. Despite the rapid outcome, it was clear that possessed a secret advantage that allowed him to bring his opponent to his knees in no time at all. Offered a half smile, admitting that always managed to catch him off guard. Reached out his right hand with a composed demeanor, acknowledging that the competition had been evenly matched. His brow furrowed as he wondered aloud if this had all been orchestrated from the beginning. Gave a nod, quietly agreeing that in some sense it was true. Let out a sigh, accepting that the agreement between them would be honored. He pressed on, asking what the other person desired, whether it was limitless riches or a unique treasure found nowhere else. Gave a slight shake of his head, silently dismissing the options. He had no interest in either choice presented. Instead, his attention was fixed on something far more challenging, gaining entry to the Minotaur's labyrinth. He had made up his mind to participate in the upcoming raid. In another location, the head of the department reacted with shock upon hearing the announcement. The Minotaur's maze sprawled perilously near the mouth of the abyss, filled with deadly snares and warped corridors that bent space in confusing ways. Surviving demanded an extraordinary level of awareness from participants, but even so, numerous guilds and top-tier S-class adventurers had already met defeat. At that moment, the Indivisible Guild was conducting the raid ceremony, intending to investigate the area without drawing attention. Yet the mystery remained. How had discovered their plans? The possibility of complications seemed inevitable. The chief remained unsettled, his mind restless with worry. reality. The abyss was a place where the unexpected lurked at every turn. Despite these concerns, the group had no option except to place their faith in for the time being. He was less concerned about the dungeon and more troubled by the thought that his deepest anxieties could become reality. Just then, the operation screen erupted with a loud, blaring alarm. An urgent communication arrived from the Our Nation Players Association, requesting that someone get in touch with them without delay. An official invitation from the Saint personally reached. The news left the guild master in a state of shock. The story transitions to the sprawling gate control center, located deep below the association's main building. Secretary reviewed the list of names, carefully ensuring every participant was accounted for. With the complete, she confirmed there were exactly 100 people ready for the labyrinth raid. Not a single person was missing. The entire group had arrived. Guided by the team moved forward, heading straight for the entrance of the Minotaur's maze. A deafening crash resounded through the air just seconds afterward. The raid was as creatures emerged in droves from the darkness. A lone person sprinted by in a blur. In a flash, all the surrounding Minotaurs collapsed to the ground, their bodies neatly severed. Flashed a sly smile, surprised by the other's keen perception. He then wondered about the progress with the weapon, curious to know how well it was being managed. Gave a nod, silently expressing how wonderful it felt. His lips curled into a sly smile, satisfied with the situation. He silently approved, thinking that the sword named a rare grade weapon had been intended as a special present to welcome the other person into his guild. Arched his eyebrow, questioning whether attempting the raid was truly wise, since no one had managed to conquer the labyrinth in 3 decades. In response, remained composed and assured him that success was possible, though he admitted it would require unique strategies to overcome the challenge. Secretary dismissed the worry with a casual gesture. Everyone in the area could hear at least B-class. The beasts would not pose a threat for long. Additionally, the Vice Master employed perception magic, allowing them to expose every hidden trap that lay in their path. She mentioned that their preparations had been for several months. Deep within the abyss, a creature emerged, having broken free from the labyrinth, markings identical to the sigil stretched across its body. As soon as they made contact with the creature's remains, the entire body disintegrated into dust, leaving only the fractured horn behind. The realization struck them. By following the horn's trace, they would be able to find the correct route that led further into the heart of the labyrinth. A short time later, guided by the Vice Master, the group successfully arrived at the maze's exit. A gigantic statue of a minotaur towered in front of them. The structure loomed high above, casting a foreboding shadow. Someone in the group hesitated, their voice tinged with uncertainty as they wondered aloud if the horn was meant to be attached. Signaled for someone to bring the horn over to him. Realized that events were unfolding just as they had in the past. The raid team had discovered the statue and fixed the horn back onto it, and at that moment, disaster had struck once again. At that instant, the carefully secured the horn where it belonged. A low, distant sound filled the air, while the statue slowly crumbled away. As the stone lost its color, pale, skeletal fragments appeared from inside. Once the glow disappeared, the group realized they had been transported to an entirely new place. Suspicion was confirmed as a sense of dread washed over him. The spatial shift trap had indeed been activated.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole, spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork, and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Webtoon Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.